presence and having you as our guest here tonight. So we'll go around and do announcements or introductions first. Like I said, I'm Pat Jakopchik from 307.
Good evening. Welcome to UDC. My name is David Dickinson. I'm Commissioner of ANC 3F01. By the way, given our guests, that includes UDC, Hearst Elementary, and Sidwell.
No.
Good evening. Naomi Rutherford, Commissioner for Single Member District 3F03, which is the Forest Hills of the Elmhar, Connecticut Square, going that way.
Andrew Volod, 3F05, Commission Secretary. 3F05 is Comet Ping Pong and Politics and Prose.
Deirdre Brown, Commissioner for 3F04. I have several blocks right on Connecticut Avenue, including Park Van Ness and Simpson.
Hi, I'm Shirley Adelstein, ANC 3F2. I'm also the treasurer of ANC 3F, and my district is right by the Van Ness Center.
Great. Before we get started, we just have a few changes to the agenda. First is moving the Upton Street traffic calming resolution to the end of our regular agenda outside of our consent agenda. We're going to give that 5 minutes on the agenda. Additionally, we're going to increase our times with Mayor to 35 minutes. We do have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to be holding close limits on the times we've set. So if commissioners would wish for any issue to go on, I just would like them to make a motion to increase debate on it. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
A motion to approve the agenda.
In a second? All right. From Commissioner Millard, all in favor? Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mayor Bowser. Thank you.
Well, good evening, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, congratulations and good luck on your first meeting. And let me thank all of the Commissioners for having me in tonight. Let me just say that I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your mayor, for the questions that you give us, the challenges, and all the help that you provide in our work across the District of Columbia. I think that with this meeting, I would have attended as mayor all of the commission meetings in Ward 3, and that is our goal for the entire city. I've invited, as I do, to all of these presentations, several members of my cabinet, and I'd like to introduce them. And at the start, before I give my remarks, I'd like them just to say for 60 seconds what they do. Then I'll launch into a very short briefing and then leave as much time as the chair allows for questions. Hi. I'm Holly Donaldson. I'm the director of the DC Department of Housing and Community Development. I have 4 main priorities that include increasing production of affordable housing, increasing preservation of our existing affordable housing, promoting stronger home ownership across all 8 wards, and helping to end homelessness in our city. The mayor has committed $100 million to the Housing Production Trust Fund. My job is to make sure we're using those funds in a productive way for affordable housing across all 8 wards, and we are doing that. We had $130 million out the door this past fiscal year. So with that, I'll pass it to Deputy Mayor.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Hester Chung. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services. I oversee the strategic management of 8 agencies that fall under Health and Human Services and oversee a couple of the key mayoral initiatives, including the short-term family housing, and we address encampments, and we are part of all the conversations around our system of healthcare delivery system in the district, and I am just delighted to be here.
Great. My name is Jenny Niles. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Education, and I have 6 agencies. I have DC Public Schools, Parks and Rec, and you'll hear from our director momentarily. The Office of the State Superintendent of Education, and then UDC. Yay! DC Public Libraries, as well as the Public Charter School Board and all the public charter schools. Happy to be here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keith Anderson, the proud director of DC's Department of Parks and Recreation, where the fun happens. With the holidays fast approaching, we have many events, whether you're 8 years old or 80. So please check us out at dpr.events. for an event that suits you and your family. We have several of them coming up, starting with the breast cancer walk this Saturday. As we all know, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so I hope you'll participate in that. And we have a myriad of Halloween events coming up. So please check us out at dpr.events. Find an event for you and your family. Also, our fall registration is still going on. We have classes anywhere from Zumba to Taekwondo to pottery. So please check us out at dpr.dc.gov. And remember, this is where the fun happens.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jeff Meridian. I'm the Acting Director of the District Department of Transportation. We are the agency that builds and maintains the city's infrastructure, everything from streets and alleys to sidewalks to street lights to traffic lights and to our urban forest, our shady trees. As many of you know, last week the mayor kicked off the 6th Alley Palooza campaign. It's a worth a round of applause. Since 2015, DDOT has reconstructed almost 400 alleys across the city. We have one currently under construction here in 3F. And we are keenly focused on improving the safety and the quality of the infrastructure all across 8 wards of our city.
Thank you. So I brought these folks because I anticipate some questions for them. And so I want to make sure that we can get you the most direct information possible. So I start off with a lot of thanks. And for me, sometimes it's hard to believe that we're doing things in our administration for the 3rd time, already 3 years into a 4-year term. So I was pleased to work with the council on 3 balanced budgets where the city has received 20 straight years of clean audits. And for the last 2 years, we have in fact not gotten any material weaknesses from those audits, which says we're running the government in an efficient way, we're doing things the right way, and our audits are coming back clean. So that's something that we should all be very proud of. I am also, thank you, very pleased to say that our city's financial health has never been better. And I want to acknowledge the councilwoman, our council members, and previous and past leaders in the District of Columbia, because in many ways, these are the best of times in our city. And because they are, we can make some of the most critical investments in making our city even safer and stronger, our schools better, and our neighborhoods have the types of amenities that DC residents want. What we also know is that we continue to grow at a pretty good clip. Almost 1,000 people every month are moving and staying in the District of Columbia. And that rapid growth has changed a lot of things, and it has created many opportunities, but it has also created some challenges. And so our 3 budgets have really focused on areas of opportunity and challenge. You will be happy to know, as we were at the beginning of this school year, we were able to do and report several good things. First of all, early in the year, in February, we appointed a new chancellor. His name is Antoine Wilson. He told me in February that he would get to all of the 100, just over 100 DC public schools by the end of the school year. And he did exactly that. And in that course of time, he met with teachers and parents and the students to figure out how we were going to build on the work of Chancellor Henderson and for the next 5 years have a new strategic plan. And Chancellor Wilson, I should say, has introduced the new 5-year strategic plan for DCPS. So when we started the school year, we started with a report about the PARC results for the city. That's the exam that we use to measure our students' achievement. And we were able to say that every subgroup of students, the white kids, the black kids, the English language learners, the children with special needs, had all seen significant improvements in their math and reading scores. And for the first time, we actually saw those scores outpace the scores of the public charter schools. So what that demonstrated to us is that our commitment to investing in both sectors, DC public schools and the public charter schools, is paying off for kids all across our city. So that was very good news. We could also also report that we had reached an agreement with our teachers. We had not been able to reach an agreement with our teachers. They were working without a contract for 5 years. And we were able to reach a very fair agreement that covered 3 years. We sent that agreement to the council, and I want to thank Councilmember Che and others for approving that agreement. So now our teachers will have the fair pay that they deserve. In our budgets, we have also been focused on, as you heard Polly say, affordable housing. The main anxiety that we hear across the city. Everyone is pleased that we are growing, that we are attracting new development and restaurants across the city. Everyone loves the opening of the new wharf, but they're also very concerned about what that type of rapid growth means for housing costs. I'm going to get a little water as I speak. And so I pledged when I became mayor that we would double the investment that the city had made prior to that in affordable housing. When I became mayor, we were spending about $50 million a year for our Housing Production Trust Fund, which is a very effective tool for making sure affordable housing projects happen. So for each of the 3 years and for each of my 3 budgets, we have presented $100 million in affordable housing for the Housing Production Trust Fund. And as Polly mentioned, another problem that we had was actually spending the money. And so now the private sector and the bureaucracy is able to get that money out the door. So this year we actually spent $130 million going into projects that will keep adding to the affordable housing stock of the District of Columbia. We know that in 4 years we can help produce and preserve and put into the pipeline 8,000 units of new housing. And if you give it to me in the next 4-year term, we know that we can do 10,000 units of affordable housing that is created, preserved, and put in the pipeline, which is good news for us. The last section of activity I want to talk about has to do with public safety. We were actually just working on some figures to put in our proposal to Amazon. And so we're looking at big cities situated just like we are. We're looking at the last 3 years, the last 10 years, the last 15 years, and 20 years. And really right now, this is about the safest that we've ever been in the history, probably about the last 25 years in the district, where we see all levels of violent crime down. Homicide, burglary, assault, sex crime. Sex crime may be one that we're still working on because those numbers aren't driving down as low as we want. But we see those numbers all at historic lows in the District of Columbia. I appointed Peter Newsham a little bit earlier in the year to succeed Kathleen Lanier. He has not missed a beat. He has put fantastic lieutenants and commanders in place. And deployment plans that have been very responsive to crime trends where we see them. I mentioned that we've done 3 balanced budgets, but we've also implemented 3 safe summer initiatives across the city, which has been very effective for keeping the city safe. So I wanted to just hit on a few areas. I know you have some specific questions about your neighborhood, so I wanted to leave all the time left to answer those questions.
Great. Thank you so much. We're going to start out with some questions from the commissioners, and then we'll expand it to the audience. So just start with you. Look on that end of the okay. Here.
Thank you for coming out, Mayor. I do have a quick question for you. As far as the programs you have for the affordable housing, how are you working to get the word out specifically to realtors? I work in a field where I deal with realtors, and a lot of them aren't aware of the benefits of DC Open Doors, which you have. And they're the front lines to making sure that our buyers know that these programs and these sponsors out there.
Well, we do have a pretty close relationship with realtor organizations, but it sounds like we need to do a little bit more work. And you touch on something that is important, because I can go into a room I can go into a room of our employees and they won't know about programs that are offered. And then people will also say, well, I can't afford this or I can't afford to buy, when in fact they knew nothing about some of the programs that we offer. So we'll take that as a challenge to do more work with realtors and publicize those programs more. In fact, just last week, we announced a new set of incentives that are focused on our first responders. And so it will make even more robust our employee first-time homebuyer assistance. I think up to $45,000. For new police officers, we're offering a 6-month housing bonus when they sign on with us. That's $1,000 per month to help them transition into a DC home and into our department. We also have increased the amount of first-time homebuyer assistance in HPAP. I think we went from $40,000 to $80,000. $50,000 to $80,000 that a qualified first-time home buyer can get in first-time assistance. So there are a lot of programs, and we'll continue to find ways to publicize them.
Yeah, I have a question, not
Can you speak into the
necessarily
mic,
directly
please?
related. Sorry, I have a question not necessarily directly related to this ANC, but sort of district-wide that's of interest to me. And that has to do with the mandated tax cuts that went into effect early this year. You talked about how the district is in very good financial health. Part of that was because certain programs and certain budget decisions were made and cuts and things like that. And I know that it's mandated to give that money back as tax cuts, but I'm wondering if you guys would consider sort of restoring funding to some things that may have gotten cut instead of that. So maybe talk a little bit about that balance.
So don't assume that our financial health is because we cut some things, therefore we have money. The truth is it's happening because many, many people are moving here and paying taxes. Even more businesses are moving here and paying taxes. So what actually has happened is that our revenues have gone up. And we have managed our expenses. Since I've been mayor, I think year over year we've increased our spending, our budget by about 3%, which is healthy for a city like ours with a $14 billion budget and 680,000 people. So it is important for us to remain balanced, but if there is something that I think we need to spend money on, and so I tell the council members, I won't hesitate to tell you. I won't hesitate to do it. So if I feel like I need more money from taxpayers, I'll tell you. But I think you hired me to make sure that I spend what we need to spend, but not a penny more. So that's where we are. So you're referring to that we have made our tax structure more progressive. And we entered into, I think, a 3 or 4 year plan that a commission voted on that would make our tax system more progressive and more fair. And so over the course of 3 years, we've been able to implement all of those tax impacts. And they have touched every strata, every economic strata in our city.
I have 2 questions, and they kind of, flow together, but if you address them separately, I'd appreciate it. They kind of start out with microcosms here in ANC 3F, but I think they can be applied to the city as a whole, and I just get your city view on it. The first one is kind of government efficiency and interaction between city agencies. We have a project, a potential project within ANC 3F regarding renovations at Hearst Park, and long ago we asked for DOEE to be brought in from the beginning and being put in for the planning process. We did that because there's a number of, not exactly shovel-ready projects, but a number of projects that they've identified for the site being considered, having to do with stormwater mitigation and things like that. And we had asked, for that agency to be brought in and other applicable agencies at the beginning so that their work could be kind of distilled throughout this process to take advantage of economies of scale, minimize disruption to the neighborhood and things like that. That specifically, but more general, how do we get the agencies to work together and get that sort of efficiencies that I think you're trying to push within our government?
So they do work together. Could they work together better? Probably, and we work on that. But let me talk to your instance specifically. So in the case of a parks project, which I assume you're talking about at Hearst Park, we have our real estate arm, basically our construction team, and Director Gillis has joined us, who is the director of DGS. She has a whole division at DGS that's focused on sustainability. So while she's always going to reach out to her sister agency, that agency encounters environmental issues with every project. So that's why we have a team at DGS that's focused on sustainability. So if you weren't getting the right answers, or DOEE had separate projects going on, that is something that I would expect the program managers at DGS to be working through with DOEE.
The second thing is also sort of big picture, but it happens right here at home. The time I've been involved with our community and the ANC specifically, I've seen multiple studies on like the future of our streetscape, just like shades of green, talking about low impact development along Connecticut, different marketing or feasibility studies for businesses and economic development. And I've got 3 of them sitting on my shelf at home, collecting dust. How do we move from the sort of planning and study stage to the implementation?
Sure, that's a very fair question. I've been asking it since I was an ANC commissioner. And one thing that we've done, there is always a role that the planners have to play, but they are not the implementers. So their job is to envision what could happen, given our current zoning regulations, given the aspirations of what people have in the community, given what our planners are telling us about the growth of the community, or it could be even the decline of a certain corridor. So their job is to lay out what can happen. It is an important step, however, because usually most of our plans have been through, if it came out of the Office of Planning, 18 months of discussion. They've been before the ANC. In some cases, they've been before the council, and they have gained a certain amount of consensus. Those plans are important because then our economic development staff can go out when we're talking about attracting new development and say, here, the community has already agreed to this. So when we propose this project, the ANC, if it follows this plan, it would only be illogical for the ANC and the council and the adjacent neighbors to support it. So those plans are critically important. Now, I talk to your council member all of the time about some of the underutilized parcels, the things that we know that we need to see moved. And you have quite a lot on either side of the university. And so, periodically I sit down with a council member and our whole economic development team and talk about how we're going to drum up interest from the private sector to make those parcels enhance the community.
Thanks very much. I think my question might follow on to that. As we're enjoying this development and the growth in the city, we're also concerned with environmental impacts. We spend a lot of time at the ANC talking about trees and talking about stormwater management. And also where the city has been named one of the 100 resilient cities, that's particularly to #1 in the world to address
#1 LEED Platinum,
which has a lot to do with climate change and mitigation and things. So I appreciate if you could talk for just a few minutes about some of the activities and priorities and plans
Absolutely.
Protecting the environment.
Absolutely. So we see over the last several months, one of the biggest threats of the current administration down in Pennsylvania Avenue is rolling back federal and national activities and action related to climate change. We did apply and we were named one of the 100 resilient cities in the world, and that came with a grant that allowed me to hire a chief resilience officer that sits in the office of the city administrator, and we have a team of directors. You're going to talk about coordination where we have everybody from DOEE to health, to our insurance commissioner, who all play a role in making sure that the city is resilient. This season should tell us one thing for sure. We've seen just terrible natural disasters close by and far away that has us all thinking about making sure that we will be prepared for that type of disaster, but more than that, to do all we can to avoid it. Councilwoman Che should be recognized for all the legislation that she has moved through the council that has helped put the city in the position to apply to be the only city in the world that has LEED Platinum status, the only city in the world. And we have been very serious about our built environment. We moved in this last couple of years to buy into a wind agreement that will allow us to power 25% of government buildings with the wind energy that we procured. And we have similarly a very big solar commitment. So we're doing quite a lot of those things to keep it going. Now, the DOEE also just made a huge commitment to tree planting. I think we were here maybe 2 years ago to have a tree summit and to talk about trees. And we have upped our commitment to plant more trees. The final thing I say has to do with waste and how we are better managing our waste. So we're working with restaurants on a compactor initiative because where they don't properly remove their waste, there are other little critters that follow. So we're working with them. The Department of Public Works has increased the amount of materials that can be recycled. I hope that you've gotten that mailer recently that describes the additional items that can be recycled. So those are some of the new things we're doing. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor Bowser and your staff, all of your directors. Welcome again.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm at a smorgasbord here, to be honest with you. I wish I could pose 10 different questions. I know the audience has a lot, but I can't. I've been known to ask many. I was thinking that the city truly is on an upswing. It's been on an upswing for a long time, and congratulations to everybody in this room and to your administration. I think there's been a long push to retain families in the city to prevent the exodus when kids enter when families' kids enter the school system, and I know that's changed. I know there's been a lot of money put into the modernization of schools. And just real quickly, in addition to police officers, think about teachers for affordable housing and $1,000.
I think they're part.
They're part of that as well. Great.
Part of the increase. Yes.
Great. So I'm thinking about Wilson High School here, and as you know, we have Hearst and Merch and Eaton and a variety of other schools. And I've been thinking about the park scores and how we're lifting, but there's still sort of an equity gap or a performance gap there. And I'm thinking about the annual budget cycles and the LSATs and how respectively they might get yanked around a little bit, or we're not really sure about where Wilson's budget's going to be. Maybe we're $1 million or $2 million short on teachers, and then we backfill them, you know, a month or two into the process. And meanwhile, we are excited about our school modernizations, but we seem to experience cost overruns.
You seem to what?
We seem to experience significant cost overruns.
What are you referring to?
I'll refer to Duke Ellington High School.
Okay, so let me explain Duke Ellington. No, because I have to stop you there, because I want the information to be correct. And this sometimes happens in school budgeting, and people call it overruns, when in fact that's not what it is at all. And we've changed this, by the way, and so it is important for us to figure out how to stick with it. For many years, you know, I was on the council for 8 years. What would happen is a little bit of money would be put into a school for modernization, just to demonstrate that we're going to get to it, but fully knowing that's not what the school needs. You know it needs is going to need 30 or 40 million more. Now I'm going to go back to my memory with Ellington. I think that the first tranche of money put into Ellington was $60 million. We haven't built a high school for $60 million in 20 years. So nobody thought that $60 million is what Ellington was going to cost. Yet when you read the reports, it says Ellington was $100 million over. It wasn't $100 million over. That was the tranche of money put in to get going with Ellington. And I could tell that story for just about every school in Ward 3. That's the way the budgeting has worked. So what we have done, so instead of telling a school that we're going to renovate Duke Ellington and this $60 million is going to do it, what we've done is said we're not going to tell anybody about a renovation until we know that all of the money is lined up over 3 consecutive years. 1 year for planning and 2 years for construction. And that's when you know you have a real budget.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And
Okay.
I didn't mean to mischaracterize the overrun issue as opposed to the multiple year budget. I do think there's a concern or perception that we've spent a lot of money on schools and that we're also spending quite a bit on our operating budgets for schools, but we can't seem to necessarily get the right formula in place for places like Wilson High School. And let me just, I hate to go out on a limb here, but I know that UDC has become a terrific four-year university, a terrific community college as well. We continue to talk about the pipeline from all across the city into UDC and other job training opportunities. So I'm just more generally posing the question, do we really think we're getting the operating budgets right for the high schools across the city and for UDC as our only public university? Because I'm concerned that we are retaining the families, we're retaining them. One of my children is now at Yale. We're retaining them through the middle school, but maybe we're going to start, and I'm talking to families, maybe we're going to start losing them at the high school level.
Well, the experience at Wilson would suggest that we're not losing anybody. And let me tell you why. And that's just, I'm talking about one school, but your point is well taken, that we have to make the necessary investments. And we see the benefits of those investments paying off in our early grades. We started, I guess, about 2002, 2011 with pre-K3. Those children are now getting to the age where they'll be on testing and will really be seeing the benefits of starting early. The biggest or the first pressure point that I see is at the middle school level, to be quite honest with you, because that's when, if a child is behind, that's when they're going to start to become disinterested and disengaged, and it will be more difficult for them to catch up. So we've been very focused on middle school interventions. And that's also important for this commission area, because the more confident and the better the middle schools are across the city, we'll see less and less pressure on one single school in the entire city. So we've been very focused on that. We've made additional investments. Chancellor Wilson is focused also on making sure that the offerings are robust across the system for languages, math, and extracurricular activities at the middle grades. Now, the Wilson budget, I've talked every year about the Wilson budget, and we didn't get it right. The projections that we had, that we relied on, that held true for, I think, the previous 2 years, didn't hold true this time. So the budgeted number of students, a significant number more students showed up on day one of school. So the necessary adjustments have been made. I can assure you that we will look at that assumption that we used that held true for 2 years in a row. But how should I say, the performance of the feeder middle schools dramatically increased in terms of sending kids to Wilson for this year.
Let me go ahead and ask one more question, if I may. Again, at Hearst Park, along with Hearst Elementary,
Sure.
is in my SMD, and we're very excited about the Hearst Park renovation. We appreciate the support of both the director of DGS and DPR. Thank you both for being here this evening. I wanted to return to Chairman Jakovchek's point
Sure.
about coordination within the agencies, and we passed a resolution in April strongly suggesting that a steering committee be used in an advisory capacity as opposed to a consensus committee, but just an advisory capacity, because there are a variety of environmental issues, stormwater, heritage trees, and there's also a concern about the installation of a pool there, whether it will be properly maintained, whether it will properly fit there. I think personally that if we can address a lot of the underlying issues in a coordinated fashion and everybody has an input at the outset, that'll go a long way toward building confidence. So I'm just wondering whether you or the respective directors have any suggestions on how we can build that confidence in our government and how we can timely address these issues.
Okay, so I'm not sure where the lack of confidence is. But I am happy to talk to the commission about how you want to work with us. Some things that we have done, I don't know if this commission has subcommittees focus on different areas. If the subcommittee that's responsible for the parks wants to invite us to a meeting, I'm happy to do that. And if the subcommittee then has recommendations, it should go to the full commission, and we're happy to give great weight to those recommendations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I think we have one more question from the commissioners before we go to the audience.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. My question pertains, thank you, to the subject of affordable housing, which I greatly appreciate you discussing with us. It's such a pressing issue. An issue that we have had in ANC 3F, and particularly in my district, has been related to inadequate enforcement of some existing protections for tenants, such as those related to rent control abuses. We've had a lot of difficulties, and that has disproportionately impacted our most vulnerable residents. In my district, which is a naturally occurring retirement community, we have many people who rely on enforcement of rent control to stay in their homes and age in place. So my question to you is, what do you think can be done to better enforce some of the existing tenant protections that are designed to help keep a stock of affordable housing?
Well, I would need to know a little bit more specifically about what is occurring with especially if they're seniors. The laws are pretty strict and direct. And sometimes if we just send one of our agencies, our Office of the Tenant Advocate, for example, to go to different buildings to make sure the tenants know their rights, that's important. But unlike any other city that I'm aware of, we have an independent Office of the Chief Advocate, of the Tenant Advocate. And so all the residents should know that she's really there to advocate for them and can assist them if there is something that's going against the law at that building. Now, what may be happening in some occasions, we have, there are certain agreements that the law allows, and we have seen, I think council member may have some legislation around this to prevent the TOPA laws from being subverted by one of these agreements. They call them voluntary agreements. There is a hardship agreement, and sometimes tenants don't understand what those agreements mean and what their long-term impact could be. So what I always recommend to a tenant, they have a developer come in, invite the government out to explain what their rights are and what these agreements could mean to them.
I'm sorry, we'll have time for the audience in just a moment. And if you want to delve into that question a little bit more, that's fine. You can come back to it at the same time we can come back to the audience. So, at this time, can I just get a raise of hands? Who has questions? Okay. I think we have the first one over there, so why don't you come down and come to the front. We're going to do it like this. If you have questions, I want the next person to queue behind the questionnaire over there. There's a microphone there, and we'll have the mayor up there. Please identify yourself. Why don't we just keep it to, we don't have to all line up, but if you want to have the next 2 or 3 questions there, just so we're not blocking the views of the councilwoman and everybody else over there. When you have a question, please announce your name and the spelling of it as you start. Also, if you have a 2-part question or multiple questions, get them all out. We're not going to have a back and forth, so just try to phrase it in a way that allows the mayor to address it all at once. So, okay, thank you. Oh, and I'm going to make a motion to extend debate. Can I again get a show of hands real quick for people with questions? Okay, I'm going to make a motion to extend debate by 15 minutes. Do I have a second? All in favor? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Harry Garrell. I'm the head of the Tenants Association in Van Ness South. It's right across the street. We've got about 600 apartments in our complex. I just wanted to follow up on the point that Shirley was making, and also to thank you for coming. I was slightly pleasantly surprised to see you tonight. What's going on is that some large housing providers are circumventing rent control in a very concerted way, in a large-scale way. And we think that could affect about half of the rent control population in the city, which would be tens of thousands of people. And what they are doing is advertising apartments at one rent. Let's say in this area, say $1,800 for a 1-bedroom apartment. when someone goes to sit down and sign a lease, on the lease they write $3,600 or some much higher number. On the following year, they ask for a rent increase based on that much higher number. So the rent increase, even in a rent-controlled building, then is the $3,600 plus the 2% plus the CPI. So people get a letter, and actually the letter that they've received, it looks like it comes from the Department of Housing and Community Development. It has the official stamp on the top, and it says that your new rent will be $3,750 for a month, which is an increase of well over $1,500. It's not unusual. We have this happen all the time. I've had about 80 people in our building that have come to me with this, and I've helped them. I work with Shirley, I've worked with the Office of the Tenant Advocate. We've run into a lot of problems. Part of the problem is enforcement, actually, and it is getting someone really to pay attention and bear down and to advertise this issue. The Attorney General is now working on an investigation. I'm hoping that sometime in the next few weeks we'll hear about that.
Who is the property owner?
This is Equity Residential.
Equity
But
Residential.
It's not just
so
Equity.
They have, they lowballed the rent for 1 year only to push it up to the next year.
That's correct.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask Polly, whose department also has the rent administrator who has to approve these types of agreements. And let me look into this one in particular.
Let me follow up because I know something more about this. These housing providers have to file the papers with the city that list the rents. And they go to the Rental Accommodations Division under DHCD. And to my knowledge, that those papers are put in a box and they come out a year later when they go to the tenant in a different form. But those numbers aren't checked. And so the city has ample information going back 10 years showing that there's widespread break of the law of rent stabilization laws and that tenants are paying a lot more money than they should.
Okay, well, I'm
but
happy to
currently
look
there's
into
no
that.
oversight.
Well,
What I'd like to ask specifically is that you would ask your DHCD to put together a report on this to find out how widespread this practice is, because right now it's up to me to FOIA that material and it's inconvenient.
Okay. So let me say, just a few months ago, after many years, I appointed a new rent administrator. So we do have a fresh set of eyes on these processes. I hadn't been aware. Polly whispered to me that she was aware of something with this Van Ness building, and so I'm happy to get back to you with a response.
I'm Chuck Ludlam. I live right across Reno Road from the embassies. First, I want to thank you and Mary for Death with Dignity. It's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant thing. It's the only state in the country that passed it on the first try. And it was not easy.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman.
She was wonderful. You supported it. And there were some conflicts in your administration on it, and you still supported it. So we appreciate it. And we're going to get it through the idiots up on the hill.
I think we almost have.
Okay. All we need is a couple of people on the Senate side who just say no.
That's
okay.
right.
Okay. We need a two-term mayor.
Thank you. I'll be it.
And we haven't had one in a while, and I spent 40 years. I was on Capitol Hill from 65 to 2005. And I'm sorry, you've been fabulous in the first term. You'll be even better in the second term because you'll be a freer. Okay, I'm going to suggest one big transformative thing that you can do for the city that I would never have expected you to do in the first term, but I will expect you to do in the second term.
Okay.
I worked on there are 26 Maryland and Virginia members. They cannot, I can tell you, block a commuter tax amendment to the Home Rule Act. They cannot do it. I have given Eugene Kinlow a 4-page memo of all of the things over 2 or 3 years that we would have to do to get $1 billion extra from Maryland, Virginia, who are stealing it and have been stealing it since the 70s.
Okay.
We are every state in the country has a right to a commuter tax. Essentially, every city in the country has a right to a commuter. Every city in Maryland, Virginia have a right. Every county in Maryland, Virginia have a right.
I'm with you.
And
So 3 to 4
raw
years
colonialism here. Okay, now I don't expect you to say this now.
Okay.
But I want you to say, we are going to get this money. We deserve it. They're stealing it, and then we can tell them that will be our guaranteed contribution to Metro and where it's yours.
Right.
It is much more progressive than a sales tax. These guys who commute are making a lot of money. This is a very progressive way to fund Metro, and then Maryland and Virginia can figure out how their guaranteed contribution will go. That is something that you could do, which would be a legacy that we have deserved. We have been abused on this subject, and I am absolutely certain from my decades on the Hill that we could get it through.
Well, I like to talk to you about your plan, because
Eugene has it all.
Eugene has it. Maybe we'll have coffee about it, because I listened intently, because I do feel like we're hitting a point where something's going to give on statehood, on turning a Republican, on getting our fair share, and the things that are happening in the city and lining up with the Congress. It may not be the time right this second, but we have to be ready for when everything is aligned, and I think you're right.
There's about a year of preparation before it goes public. Before it goes public, just one thing: when these guys, Merrill Green, they file a claim for an exemption from withholding, ask them what their AGI was the last year, and then we will have statistics on. We are probably losing $2 billion, and guess what? We would find out if they had to, and when they get in their claim, they just tell us their AGI for the previous year.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Amy Shannon. I'm a 27-year member, resident of the Cleveland Park. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you others that have come also. While I'm also the treasurer for Neighbors for Hearst Park, and while we're an organization that doesn't believe that Hearst Park is the best location, in fact, there are others locations that would be better for an outdoor pool in Ward 3. I think we would be very willing to, I guess the best way to say this is, excuse me, I'm a little nervous.
That's okay.
Is that I would be more willing to have a pool personally if I know that the significant water and drainage issues, the environmental impact, the heritage trees, and also what the neighborhood will need in terms of parking and the amount of folks who are going to be in that area during the summertime when there are also programs at Sidwell Friends School and her school. If all of those are addressed and dealt with in a good, common sense manner, I think I would be much happier. So I want to second and support Commissioner Dickinson's recommendations
Sure.
And as well as the ANC's recommendations for commissions and getting various government and ANC and other neighborhood groups together.
Absolutely. So let me just say, and I should have mentioned it too when I responded to the commissioner, is we have no interest in rushing the project. I kind of always expected that this would be something that we could move forward with really quickly by FY 2020. And so what I've asked the team to do is to continue to work with you on the engagement, work with Councilmember Che, and make sure that our budgeting process and our planning process can get in line. Because what I don't want to happen, because this is what I've heard overwhelmingly, I have heard a considerable amount of discussion and some dissent. I have heard overwhelmingly that people want our outdoor pool. And so we need to make sure we're working together to get to an outdoor pool. And so let's just make sure that the budget stays in line, so that sometimes what happens is when we can't come to a plan, there's a higher or a different priority for that budgeted dollars for the Ward 3 pool. And that could mean that a community that is ready, then that's where the budget goes. So we just want to make sure that between FY 19 and 20 that we have a plan to get to what everybody can live with.
Terrific. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the best day of my life. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
We've worked together in the past. Here's my issue tonight.
Hey, excuse me, can I ask you to introduce yourself to us?
Huh?
Your name, sir, please.
I'll get to it.
We need it for the minutes.
My name is Terry Sneed.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, formerly homeless, born, bred, and raised in Washington, D.C., was homeless for 10 years. I am currently in the Friendship Place housing. I've been there for 10 and a half years. Here's my issue. 3 people in the last week have come to me with issues about Friendship Place. Okay? They've fallen between the cracks. Now, you got this illustrious award. I got it too in 2011, but they've got issues. Okay? I don't mean to come here and air the dirty laundry, but somebody needs to do what I do. Okay? To take them to task. I'm no longer able to talk to John Michel. I'm just saying. I'm no longer able to talk to him. What's going on?
So your question, no, but I can find out. We can talk in some more detail about what you see as the issues. I will say this: we work hand in hand with Friendship Place. The government supports programs that they do because they're effective. Because if I look at all of the vendors that I work with and their results, Friendship Place is high on the list. That's not to say that they're perfect. And certainly if people have issues at Friendship Place. That's where they're at Friendship Place. Exactly. And so we want to make sure that we're helping to resolve it. We'll figure it out.
Okay. Point number 2. The intersection that I live at, Fulton and Wisconsin Avenue.
Okay.
Ma'am, if you were to take a video, a 24-hour video of that intersection, you would not have a job. You would not
What's happening at that intersection?
You don't know?
No. I don't live at that intersection, but you probably know really well, so tell me.
Yes. I cannot cross because people are in the cars, are in the pedestrian walk.
Okay,
yes.
we'll take a
Even
look at
the
that.
police. Now, Captain Williams is doing a great job as best she can.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll take it. All right. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Smith.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
I think you have the last word.
Hi. So I'm Rob Fox, just to give you a heads up so you can think about the issues. I'll be asking about some housing and child care kinds of things.
Okay.
So somebody who's experienced my own fair share of hardship, I really love the affordable housing efforts, making sure that people who don't make K Street lobbyist money can afford to live in the city. But there's sort of this funny kind of little hole between the affordable housing for like people who make $50,000 a year and all that kind of stuff, and people who make K Street lawyer money. My wife and I, we're not lawyers, we're scientists, so our income is medium level for this city, and we just don't see a real way to be able to afford housing. And it's funny, like I'm a millennial, and people go, "Oh, millennials can't afford down payments." Like, down payment's not the hard thing. When you have a $600,000 house, when you have a 20% down payment for that, the monthly payment, when you account for everything, is still $3,000 a month. Like, that's just, like, I'm a math nerd. I do this math in a spreadsheet in my house and in my apartment, and because I can't afford a house. So helping with trying to create more affordable housing stock. I don't need a 3-bedroom 2,000 square foot place in Petworth. Like, more units of like single 2 bedrooms so that families can start having something. And leading to the second point, my wife and I are hoping to start having children soon, and the cost of childcare in DC, I don't quite get why it's between $18,000 and $24,000, according to at least most recent reports. Maybe and I've looked into this kind of stuff. I don't know why it's that high, but if we can find some way to help that. Because I'm on a board of a charity in the city. I work in Petworth doing stuff with that. I want to be right here doing things. But at a certain point, it's like, it just becomes impossible to live the kind of life my wife and I want to do and be right here in the thick of things.
I got it. So your point is well made, that we have affordable housing needs all along the spectrum. Sometimes when we talk about affordable housing, people think we're only talking about low-income housing or the lowest income housing, or they only think we're talking about how we're replacing the shelter. But in fact, the programs that we focused on are also working for people in the middle. Now, one challenge I have for Polly is that our law says our Housing Production Trust Fund has to be spent on housing that is for 50% and 30% of the AMI. But that leaves out a lot of people. The people who are more than 50% of the AMI, but not rich, and still trying to figure out how they're going to pay mortgages. So we're still working on some solutions for that section of people too. I already talked to you about some of our first-time homebuyer programs. Those are important. And here's the second thing, the third thing that's important, I think, for us to consider that the city can do. We have to make more neighborhoods attractive neighborhoods for you. Because it may be that you can't live in Petworth, or it may be that you can't live in Forest Hills. But there are a lot of other neighborhoods where you can buy a home that's not $600,000. So our task is to make sure that it's safe, to make sure it has great transportation, a great school, a great library, and a great parks and recreation facility, so that more DC neighbors, everybody can't be in Ward 3 or in Ward 1 or at the wharf. Somebody told me I can't afford to live at the wharf, and I said I can't either. So we have to make sure that we have a variety of housing in all neighborhoods. But the only way, and the other thing, it has to have a grocery store. So if we can make more neighborhoods across the city have all of the amenities that you want, we opened up. You will be surprised how much great affordable housing that you could afford. Let me say something about childcare, because I also see that as a pinch point for young families like yourself. And we know, just like any other supply and demand equation, that if we have more spots available, we'll see the cost of childcare going down. The other part that makes childcare very expensive, I asked them the same thing. I was like, what in the heck, why does it cost so much? And how can we get these prices down? Some of it's regulations. And when you take care of children, everybody wants to make sure there are robust regulations, but there's a cost to that. And so some of that cost chases away people who would come and start a child care facility in our city. So with this last budget that is now, or we're in the middle of implementing it now, I asked a deputy mayor to replicate a federal government program that people adore. And that's having child care facilities in federal buildings. So what the federal government does is basically buy down the space so that the operator can then only charge for the operations and not the space. We've identified 3 new locations. One's right here at UDC. So we will be working on making those, I'm not sure how many spaces are going to be available, but we're going to make those spaces available. One is at the Stevens School. It's in Ward 2. That had been a closed school. So now we're going to make it part of our child care pilot, in addition to lower grades that will feed into the School Without Walls at Francis Stevens. And the third is at Deanwood, and that's in Ward 7, where we have a library, parks and recreation facility, and a child care space. So that's the first 3, and so we'll keep looking for that.
I think we're on our last question. I'm going to make a motion to extend debate for 3 more minutes. Do I have a second? All in favor? It's approved. David.
For the minutes, I'm David Bardeen. Good evening, Mayor Bowser.
Good evening, David.
Could you update us on the issues of statehood and voting rights?
Yes.
For people like you and me, and an awful lot of us here, who live in the District of Columbia, make our homes here.
Sure. So to add on to my earlier statements for the first question, we have tried to change the debate and advance the ball on the statehood question. We, as you know, moved a initiative on the ballot in 2014. That was the one good thing that happened on that November the 8th. More than 80% of the people in D.C., or actually more than, I think, 90% of the people voted yes for statehood. With that, they approved the draft constitution that went to the council for approval, state boundaries, and a representative government. So we've done all of those things. Congresswoman Norton then advanced her statehood bill. and she's working on increasing the number of sponsors, and we're working on finding a Republican who will cross over and help sponsor it for us as well. The council approved an education budget that we're working on now to identify the best way to educate states, and we'll probably target several states that we're trying to galvanize more support from senators in those states. So that's where we are currently.
We have time for one last question.
I'm just going to make a motion. Just one more minute. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Mine's more of a thank you.
Okay.
I'm Dr. Elliot Battle. To qualify myself, 40-year resident of D.C. I went to medical school when I was 34 years old. Finished Harvard at age 45 in dermatology. I have a 34 UDC graduate. I have a 14-year-old and a 8-year-old Washington, D.C. residents. I voted for you the first term. I will campaign for you this term.
Thank you.
Because my investment in my company, which is in D.C., and my home in Forest Hills has been such a worthwhile investment 30 years ago that I wanted to just thank you for making our city, supporting our city the way that you have.
Thank you.
And the differences is obvious to those of us. So as I met you many times, I always tell you my mother's name is Muriel.
The Muriels have to
My
stick
sister's name
together.
is Muriel, and my daughter is Alexis Muriel. So
Amen.
there's no bias in that. I applaud you for your great first term.
Thank you.
I look forward to your second term.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, when I first ran, I decided to look up all the Muriels in Washington, D.C. So if you're curious, it's about 100 of us, and I am the youngest. So and then every time I meet a Muriel, I just say we have to stick together. So let me just finally say,
And my sister is going on your sign.
okay, because Muriel. U.S., just to finish, for our great university, I want to thank President Mason and all the staff here for the president is talking to me about, you mentioned investment, about how we're going to invest strategically in UDC. His idea is that it has to be like what we did for K-12 education. I can't argue with him, and so he is going to make his case, and then we'll make our case as funding and budgets move forward. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Thanks for taking so much.
And I would be remiss if I didn't just take a moment to recognize Ian Maggard and Phil Thomas, your liaisons to our award. They make our lives much easier.
Philip and Ian, the Ward 3 Mopers are my representatives.
Thank you. Did you want to say anything? Okay. Thank you for visiting us. So I'm going to back up. I was so excited to hear from the mayor that I forgot to have our consent agenda approved. There was one change that we're not doing. So the bulk of our consent, or the entirety of our consent agenda has to deal with the grant request for the Northwest Neighborhood Trail. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Things are good. Nice to see you very much. Take care.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second? All in favor? All right, it passes unanimously. All right, we're going to go into commissioner updates and announcements, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Dickinson.
Hi again, David Dickinson with ANC 3F01. I have 4 or 5 announcements. First, this Saturday, First Elementary over on 37th Street behind Sidwell off Wisconsin Avenue is having its annual e-cycle from 9 to noon. If you have a bicycle in your garage and you want to donate it and swap it for a different bicycle, come on out. If you have a bunch of books in your library that you're tired of looking at, put them in a paper bag and bring them down and get a new paper bag of books. If you've got a bunch of electronics and TVs and computers that are broken, unused, bring them in, don't put them in the landfill. It's a cool event. It's a very community-oriented event. Bring your kids. There's a new bounce. UDC Community Task Force is rescheduled for, and I'm sure we'll hear from Ms. Gray, is rescheduled for next Wednesday, October 25th, starting at 6:30 in this room. I imagine we'll hear an update on a couple different real estate activities in our area. This Sunday, Northwest Villages is holding a gala or a fundraiser I encourage you to check it out. We talked about Friendship Place. The Northwest Villages does a terrific job for seniors in our area, and it's a neat event. We heard a lot about Hearst Park. I am obligated, since we did pass a resolution in April asking for a monthly update. DGS and DPR have provided me with an update, so I'd like to quickly read that into the record. There are 5 points. The geotech engineer performed borings in the park last week. We expect to get results from that soon. Number 2, the engineers will analyze the soils from the borings for their report and the recommendations to DGS and DPR, and we'll expect to hear about that as an ANC in November. The stormwater investigations and conditions were completed on Friday, October 13th. We've heard about that before in the community in terms of cleaning out the existing drains. Further information on that effort will be shared with us in November. And I will mention, Pat, that we probably should go ahead and use our subcommittee on Parks and Trails to invite DGS and DPR. I've suggested that a variety of our constituents and groups and DC government experts get together around the stormwater issue. So I will take the mayor at her word that maybe we use our subcommittee for that effort as opposed to me trying to organize it separately. Number 4, DPR and DGS attended Hearst PTA's meeting last October 11th. That's just an example where they're trying to solicit further input on the park, design ideas, playground ideas. Reach out to me, reach out to Jackie Stanley at DGS if you have any further ideas. There'll continue to be community meetings as well. And they are continuing to work with their partners at DDOT and the arborists who completed tree surveys to host a joint committee meeting to review the results. We heard a lot about that tonight, in addition to the stormwater, the heritage tree issue. So stay tuned on how we will convene a meeting on that as well. Thank you.
I have 3 announcements. The first one is kind of important. Well, they're all important, but this one especially. So you might notice we're a bit short-handed today. We have an open seat on the ANC, and we've set a special election date. That election date is for November 21st. It's actually our next general meeting of the ANC. Voting will begin when we gavel in at 7:30 and extend until 9 p.m. At that time, voting will close, ballots will be counted, and we'll pass the resolution seating that new commissioner at the end of the meeting. Pay attention to the website. We'll have a page up with more information. I know this isn't the easiest room to find, so if you have friends, family, or just acquaintances in 3F06, feel free to show them the way here. Also, I'd like to thank DDOT, specifically Paul Hoffman and Andrew Kaufman, for taking a walk of the Linnean neighborhood with me and some neighbors a week and a half ago to look at the streetscape and potential improvements to it, including taking on some large stormwater issues that they have. Hillwood will be hosting a special meeting sometime in November, which we're going to also invite members of the mayor's staff and the councilwoman to talk at length about potential plans for the neighborhood, so stay tuned. And the final announcement I have is about the OTA, the Office of the Tenant Advocate Stakeholder Meeting. It will be held on Wednesday, October 25th from 1 to 3 in the OTA offices at the Reeve Center. It's going to focus on 3 areas. First, housing-related legislation that's pending for the council. The second is learning about the issues and concerns tenants have in their own neighborhoods. And the third will focus on 2 specific OTA units. And to learn more, you can visit ota.dc. Thank you.
So I have one quick announcement, just to let folks know. In my SMD, there are 2 liquor licenses that are coming up for renewal. One at the CVS to sell wine, and the other at Little Red Fox also to sell alcohol, not to drink on premises. And I just want to say it's our intention not to comment. We have no objections. We're not going to sign a voluntary agreement or anything with them. So we just want folks to know, and if anybody has anything to say, then please get in touch. Thank you.
I just have one announcement. So the annual Halloween party at the Forest Hills Playground originally was scheduled for October 22nd. Is now been changed to October 29th. Mark your calendars. It's from 10:30 to 1. They're going to have lots of fun for the family. They're going to have children entertainment. DC Public Library be there. A bake sale. Balloon artists, magicians. You're welcome to come, whether you live in the neighborhood or not, and even if you don't have little ones, you're still welcome to come out and have fun.
I just have one announcement. There is also a license up for renewal in my district, and that is Giant across the street at 4303 Connecticut Avenue Northwest. As Commissioner Millard mentioned, we are not planning to protest this, but we are listening to the community for any concerns. So please feel free to contact me if you have any concerns about this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to committee reports, and I think I will be giving both committee reports. The Streets and Sidewalks Committee has not met this month. We're planning on having a meeting on October 30th here at UBC. We've invited actually some members of the neighboring ANCs on our north and south side to discuss some of the issues on Connecticut and kind of having a united front to request DDOT look into things such as the reversible lanes and other things having to do with the streetscape. If you'd like to come, just pay attention to our website because we post the meeting dates and agendas there, and you can also make it public. The Soapstone, Milton, Hayes, and Parks and Trails Committee actually met twice between our last meeting and today. We've talked about a variety of things, including the first park project. We also debriefed from the superintendent of NPS, who's Julia Washburn, whose name almost escaped me. Thank you, Commissioner. And other issues relating to our parks and trails. If you are interested in that, we meet on the second Monday of the month at the Forest Hills home in DC. Just let me know. I chair that committee as well. So it's open to the public, and we'd love to have a hand in taking care of our valuable resources here in the neighborhood.
Mr. Chakotchek, I wish that when we did the streets and sidewalks that we had DDOT and we had posed the question about who the right. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still here. Boom. Boom. We're taking surveys and compiling a list of projects, and we'd love to have a contact at DDOT that we can coordinate with and facilitate that process. Great. If you could pass on a name to Bill, that'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, the grants committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To just remind folks that we're in a twice-a-year cycle. We just finished our first cycle, so the grant application was actually approved to the consent agenda. The next one will be in March. So applications to be submitted in March will be voted on in April meeting. Thank you.
And this was a change we just did to get kind of our budget under control instead of having a rolling grant cycle, looking at them biannually. So if you or anyone you know would like to partner with us on anything, submit it by our March meeting. So do we have a police report?
Yes. Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Lieutenant Valerie Stewart. I'm newly assigned to the 2nd District. I just started last week.
Great. Thanks.
Would you like me to use it?
Yeah, you can use that one, right?
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Valerie Stewart. I'm assigned to the 2nd District. I just got assigned last week. I have 28 years of service with MPD, and I'm happy to be into the 2nd District. As far as crime, we are down in PSA 203. We did have some issues in thefts, which were up by 3% for this month. And it's probably usually to people leaving things on their car seats or in their cars that are visible. So we encourage everyone to please put everything out of sight so folks will not get into your cars. That's pretty much all that I have. So I'm very new here. I'm happy to be here. And I was not sure about the meeting today. I didn't know the mayor was going to be coming. But I am happy to be here. Anyone have any questions for MPD?
Yeah, we have some up here, and then we'll pass it to the audience just like we did for the mayor. And
yes.
We can start at that end of the table.
Yeah, so we have a few intersections in particular that, there are a few intersections in particular in our ANC that every once in a while it would be nice if some car came by and just had a look. One is at 36th and Ascendant, and the other is down at Albemarle and Connecticut. Those are two particularly challenging intersections for both pedestrians and vehicles and things like that. And there are many abuses going on, in particular during rush hour. So some kind of deterrent every once in a while would be nice.
Okay. I think I got an email from Captain Williams regarding a traffic issue in that area. So I'll take a look at that area and then also assign a car there just to take a look and see how or what is actually going on, because I understand it's aggressive driving in that area. Okay, so I'm pretty much familiar with that.
I will just like to quickly add on to that, that I would encourage also officer presence at all the schools periodically as well, including, Alice Deal, Wilson, Hearst, the merged swing space up here at UDC. Just occasional traffic stops in those areas go a long way toward overall deterrence.
Okay, now as far as the schools, that will be towards the school resource officer, so I'll pass that information along to the school resource lieutenant.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a hot spot too, real quick. And I think, and there might be something to expound upon here, but there's a left-hand turn along Connecticut Avenue at Upton. There's no left-hand turn during rush hour, but you see people, they move them and they try to do it very quickly. There's a school right there. There's multiple schools down that block. There's Burke, there's Levine, and Howard are all down there, in addition to just normal pedestrian traffic. So I don't know, is there some good way for us to just flag these? I think they're mostly enforcement issues. Is there, should we email you with them, or is there?
Please do.
Okay.
Please do. And it's Valerie,
okay.
VALERIE, Steward, STEWARD, at DC.gov.
And could we get just a patrol maybe there on Connecticut, just off of Upton? I know there's a police officer, I think assigned to Burke. I don't know if he's on duty or off, but if there was a way to.
It's a part-time. Okay.
To kind of pull double duty on that. I just don't want to see a dangerous.
You're talking about left on to Upton, or people coming off Upton making their left on to Connecticut?
It's both. I mean, but I think the one that's barred is going southbound on Connecticut.
They pull out dangerous. You can't see the traffic.
Multiple. I mean, 4 lanes of that.
Okay.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
First
yes.
I thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. But yeah, if you can please email that to me,
okay.
So I can kind of take a look at that location and see exactly what's going on up there. I'd like to take a first-hand look at it.
We'll do.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any questions from the audience?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, it's Monica Demas, and hi, Monica Nima. And so often I see on the listservs and I hear from the community that people seemingly casing houses, or a lot of time just looking at houses or kind of checking out properties. And I was wondering if we could have maybe more patrols, just an occasional car, just go down the side streets and the residential streets to just sort of discourage, let's say, people from sticking around. There does seem to be some reports of that on some of the community listservs around here.
Can you give me a location of where you're referring to?
Well, parts of Cleveland Park and North Cleveland Park, the side streets like Alton Place, Wyndham, Warren. I mean, really, any of the side streets themselves are just here occasional.
Okay.
And so and I think it's because they're out of the way side streets that people don't go down otherwise. That's just, it seems like they're quiet, so I think people might be more apt to look around and more curious, as it were.
Okay.
And so I do hear these things, and so it's just people have an occasional car, just.
Okay, roaming patrol in those side street areas.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You say Upton Street. Can you give me the street again that you gave?
Well, really, I hear them from the one streets in the SMD and 3F. So.
Okay, when you talk 3F, I'm not
Okay,
very familiar with that.
Okay, so Alton, Yuma,
okay.
Appleton, Brandywine, Chesapeake,
okay, so up in that area.
Porter, Quebec, and going down further south as well, so.
Okay, that's 203. Okay. Okay, is that also 204? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions?
Great.
Well, again, thank you. I'm happy to be here. And like I said, I'm in 203 PSA today. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So now we're going to move on to the community open forum. We've got it allotted for 20 minutes. If you'd like to speak, just come on down and take one.
Good evening, everyone. Juanita Gray, the University of the District of Columbia. Just a few things. The university continues to be in negotiations for 4250 with Bernstein. We spoke about this in the past. Fred Underwood was here during the last meeting, and myself, and we answered questions that the commissioners had. We are also working with Van Ness Main Street and Bernstein on a retail survey. The retail survey should be complete by the end of the year. In addition to the 4250 project, the university is also looking at expanding our housing portfolio in general. So in the future, we will be looking at building on campus, and those spaces will include behind the tennis courts as well as along the soccer fields. Currently we're merges, but those are future projects. I just want to put that out there so that the community is aware that the university is looking at an overall portfolio for our housing as the university continues to grow. A need for housing, as we've spoken about, continues to, and as we spoke about today, the housing market in DC continues to go up. Our students are in that market, so we want to be able to provide affordable housing for our students. Last week, or at the last meeting, we spoke about getting the commission's, sorry, now I'm nervous.
It's just Phil Thomas. He's not the mayor.
And getting your assistance with our fields and keeping our fields clean. We have put up fences along the rest of the perimeter, so they are closed off, but we do want to continue to ask that, you know, when neighbors are walking by, if they're throwing trash, to get that out there that the university, the fields are a part of our community. Our sports team, particularly our soccer team, use them daily for their practices. We hold soccer matches on our field right now. Our soccer team is doing great. They are 10-3 right now, so we want to make sure that, yes, you can clap for that. So we just want to make sure that our fields continue to be clean. So we ask for your continued help in making sure that the community gets that information. Some upcoming events, as you all know, the university has a plethora of programs and activities going on a weekly basis. Our calendar is updated. We're doing a very good job at continuing to work on updating our calendar, so events are put on the main page. The calendar, you can click on it, it's right on the front page. But two things that I do want to bring up. The Gender Justice Project Conference, Moving Beyond Resistance, is this Friday, October 20th, at the UDC David A. Clark School of Law. The purpose of this conference is to call together activists, policymakers, lawyers, and law students to envision the next stage of new movement for global gender justice. This is an all-day event from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and there's a networking reception at 6 p.m. A list of speakers and presenters can be found on the registration website, and you must register for this event. And then lastly, our next Community Campus Task Force meeting will be held on Wednesday, October 25th. It's actually in Building 39 on the 3rd floor, room 301F. And then there is one other thing that I wanted to mention. 4225 Connecticut, which is the old Walgreens building. The university is also in negotiations to rent that space, and it will be used for swing space for some of our various departments on campus. Do we have any questions? Thank you.
I have a quick request.
Yes.
Can you send me an email with those announcements, and I'm going to ask the same thing if you have some announcements. It's just easier for me than trying to get everything right. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And a quick follow-up question on the on-campus housing projects.
Yes.
Do you have any sort of, I know you're still visioning that, but just any general time frame when that'll be scoped out?
Not until after 42. Well, once we have reached some type of conclusion with 4250, whether we're going to move forward with Bernstein or whether we're going to not move forward with Bernstein. So that's the priority right now, but everything moving forward depends on whether or not we move forward with that project. So I don't want to give you a timeline when we just don't have one.
Could you say more about your swing space idea?
I can give you, so as the university continues to grow in numbers, we continue to grow in staff. So we have, I'll give you an example of our IT department. Right now, they are currently in a building that houses our library and other buildings, but they're stuck in a very small space. Our IT department continues to grow on campus, so we need to move them to an area where they can expand and meet the needs of our students here on campus. Our facilities department, facilities and real estate, as they continue to grow their department, a need for space just increases. We just need more space. We're a growing campus, we're a growing community. We're kind of limited in this. We can't go past the embassies. We can't do a lot of things. So that's an opportunity that has presented itself to the university, and we're moving forward with it.
When you say you're moving forward with it, where exactly? What is the status of the negotiation?
We're still in the very early phases. Just like 4250, it's all a process. So we're still in the very early phases of negotiation. Once we continue to move forward, we will definitely make sure that the commission is updated on everything that we're doing.
And lastly, so this is specifically the idea would be for staff use, for office space, not for student use?
Right now, it will be for staff use, but that's not exclusive. So in the future, it could be something else. But right now, we are looking at mainly staff use.
And sorry, one last question.
Yes.
Is this something you intend? This may be too early to answer, and I'm sure we'll talk about this at the task force. But would you envision a lot of changes needed to accommodate the university's use of the property, either internally or externally, and moving into public space? Is that something we should be thinking about?
So I don't want to go too far into that right now because it's still very early and the space can be used in a multitude of different ways. So that's just something that we will definitely get, feedback from the community as we move forward with the project, and we'll update us as often as we can.
We'll keep talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have an update. Tommy, don't leave. I brought 3 things with me, as well as the mayor who just left. The 30-month report, what the mayor has done for the last 3 years. So hopefully everybody has a copy of that. If not, there's some outside. Also, I brought the mayor's newsletter. That what she's doing this week is obviously DC. She just submitted to Amazon for the Amazon headquarters. That's also in the newsletter. That's the second piece of information above. And then the mayor has a new pledge out called Everyday Counts. It's for trying to get children to school on time every day. It tells you more information about it. As you know, it takes a village to raise a child. And it just helps if you see a child that should be in school that somebody said something, and to make sure that you get your child to school every day. So here's the information of the pledge. This pledge is outside, so hopefully everybody can fill it out and give it to the water who's outside. And also I'm going to introduce my director, Tommy Jones. Stand up, Tommy, as the mayor was saying. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
My name is Damian Jones. I'm the head of Edinburgh School, and I want to thank you, Commissioner, for the issue that you raised about left turns on Upton. I appreciate your concern for the safety of the residents and for the students who attend school there. I'm entering my 4th year at Burke, and I remember when I got here my first year, I introduced myself to the Commission, to the ANC, and it's been a while since I've been back. I'm pleased to be a part of the community and certainly pleased to know all of you and hope that we can work together on all the projects that you are bringing to the neighborhood. If there's anything I can do to help the commissioners or members of the community, I am certainly amenable to meeting with any one of you. We have neighborhood meetings that we invite all residents on Tilden, on Van Ness, and on Upton to attend. We have them once a month. And it's an opportunity for us to talk with you about things that are happening within our school community, but also an occasion to hear from you about things that are of concern or of interest that we need to attend to as good neighbors. So our doors are open, and we hope that you might attend. Thank you all so much.
Is there a website where we can look at the the schedule of the meetings?
Yes, we post those meetings on our school calendar. So if you go to our website and you look at the calendar, it's posted there by month.
Thank you.
That's my pleasure.
Good evening, Commissioners. Lee Brian Reba, REBA, with the University of the District of Columbia, the Office of the President. Just wanted to share with you of an exciting event happening this Saturday. The historic Joint Masonic Scholarship Program is going to be launched by the Grand Lodge of D.C. and the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of D.C. is coming together through their scholarship foundation and will be donating $400,000 to the University of the District of Columbia for student scholarships. That will be taking place this Saturday, but wanted you to be aware that there'll be approximately 300 to 500 lodge members coming onto campus. They will be organizing at the Student Center along Connecticut Avenue and then marching out onto Connecticut Avenue, turning on Van Ness, coming up Van Ness into our circular driveway where you come in for tonight's meeting, and they'll be meeting, and the dedication of the plaque will be on Denard Plaza, Dr. Cleveland on Denard Plaza, at about 12 o'clock. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's Teresa with Cameron with Van Ness Main Street, and I want to thank everybody for coming. I wanted to mention a few things that are happening in Van Ness. I wanted to thank the district government for increasing all of the Main Street programs funding, so we're very excited about that. We have some new board members who have joined our board. Reggie Felton from UDC is going to be chairman of the UDC board. Ed Sands, who is the owner and director of Calvert Woodley, and Pat, who is going to be joining the board. So we're very excited to have our new board members. One of the other things we're working on, UDC mentioned, we're doing a retail study with Bernstein and UDC, and we're all putting a piece of money in to look at the retail prospects here in Van Ness, and we're contracted with HR&A, and so we're very excited about that, and that should be completed in about 60 days. Starting in November 25th, which is Shop Local, we will be opening our annual pop-up store, and this year it's going to be 3 weekends, made in DC themed, and it will be Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, so we're really excited about that, and it's going to be in the retail of the UDC Law School, which is 4340. Again, we continue with the farmers market, and we have a performance this weekend. I wanted to let the commissioners know that the farmers market has doubled its attendance in the last year, so we're now up to between 1,200 and 1,400 people coming to our market. And we'd love to have ANC anytime have a table there. We'd like to answer questions with the community, and we offer that for you. Finally, we have our huge project, which again I mentioned at the last meeting we heard about on September 7th. We were the state grantee from the National AARP to do create the Van Ness project. So we had a community meeting last night to discuss kind of some of the parts of our project that we're thinking about doing, and some of you were there, so thank you. The culminating event is going to be on Saturday, October 28th from 3 to 7. And again, it's at 4250 Connecticut, and it's that area where the retail in front of the buildings is totally vacant. We're going to transform it into a new third space for Van Ness, and it's a way for you to get to know your neighbors. I am going to hand out save the dates to all of you, and I expect to see all of you at this, because it's really going to be a super fun event, very community oriented and also very artistic. You'll actually be able to create a dance for Van Ness, so don't be scared, you don't have to dance, but if you'd like, we'd love to have you there. We'll have a lot of arts events. We'll have also a way for you to get to know your neighbors, and most importantly, reinvigorating of that plaza in Van Ness. So again, it's October 28th from 3 to 7, and I'll hand out these flyers. So thank you.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Commission, for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm going to introduce myself to everyone here. My name is Monica Nemeth, and I am actually a candidate for ANC 3F06 in the upcoming special election that was just announced for November 21st. I'm a longtime resident of Washington, D.C., and I've been living on Alton Place. I've owned my own home now for 15 years. I love my neighborhood. I love my community. I'm very passionate about this area and my community in general. I'm a great supporter of Van Ness Main Street. I was actually at a kickoff or a creative meeting last night with them and looking forward to participating more and more with Van Ness Main Streets. I am also very interested in issues regarding aging in place. I think there's I have an elderly mother in New Jersey who will come to stay with me and will eventually move in with me. And I see the issues that I know she would love to be able to stay in her own home, but I'm here, so she's coming down and she's going to maybe take care of it here. But I want to be able to see what we can do in our community to help seniors age in place and to be able to give the support necessary for them able to do so and stay in their own homes as best they can. Other issues that I'm concerned about, really just quality of life stuff. You know, I think we're very lucky to live in 3F. It's an amazing part of town, and we really, I think, are very lucky to be able to live here. But there are some things which I'm glad that I've noticed that the Commission is talking about tonight, including traffic on Connecticut Avenue. I often think that Connecticut Avenue seems to be a superhighway at times, and you see the way cars just race down during rush hour. It was along Connecticut Avenue around 4:30 tonight. We're down to Soapstone and then Redfirst, and it's like, wow. So I'm glad to hear that the Commission is going to be inviting me to look at things. So I just wanted to introduce myself and let everyone know if you're in 3F06, please consider me and come out and vote for the special election. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, and just a reminder that special election is at our next monthly meeting. First, moving forward, I'm going to tee this up, Commissioner Greenberg. We're going to have a discussion on the benefits related to the public use development proposal at 3101 Albemarle. The benefits, not the architecture or anything else.
Thanks, Pat. So just to follow on a little bit to Pat's introduction there, as many of you are aware, if you've been following this issue in the ANC, there's a proposal for a planned unit development at 3101 Albemarle. The Soapstone Valley Ventures, PG and Bobby Gottfried, and their architect, have been here a couple times and presented to us their drawings. But a big piece of the planned unit development is basically the heart of planned unit development is that the developers are asking for some changes in zoning, some relief in zoning, in exchange for community benefits. And I think we've heard quite a bit about the changes in zoning, which is from single family to a multi-family zoning and one non-conforming lot. But what we haven't heard very much about are the benefits that they are proposing. I do want to let people know there have been a fair amount of discussion about benefits within the community. All of this has been shared with the Gottfrieds and incorporated, or we'll hear how much they've incorporated. But there's been discussions, formal discussions in the neighborhood, informal discussions in the neighborhood. The commissioners have discussed it. The subcommittee on Parks and Trails has discussed it. I have used other neighborhood events, other gatherings of neighbors in the SMD who are concerned with other issues to get their pulse on this issue, neighbors that were not immediately adjacent. And they've been very, all of this input has been shared, and we will continue to share it. We are not taking any action on the PUD tonight as an ANC. We will not be discussing any resolution. The PUD, once the application goes in, there's a process with the Office of Zoning and Office of Planning. They will be looking, they will undoubtedly, likely, ask for changes. And we will wait and continue to have our discussions. And once the application is fairly settled down and is coming closer to the time for its full and formal review, at that time the ANC will consider a resolution to support the application with conditions, or to not support the application. But that will not happen until we are close to the hearing date for the PUD, which is, I think, a very best case scenario is 60 to 90 days. Oh, a very best case scenario, 60 to 90 days out. So there's still lots of opportunity for input and discussion, and if there are other kind of meetings people want to have, we're very open to hosting those meetings. Again, so I just want to say we're going to hear about the benefits part of the equation, and that's what we'd like to keep the discussion focused on tonight. Thanks very much. That, PG and Bobby, we need no introduction at this point.
And just a reminder, I'm allotting 15 minutes for that, so please leave some short time at the end.
So, I will start with the amenities package.
Sorry about this, we don't have a stand tonight.
No problem. I can really cover up the city's.
And this, you just have your handout, right? And this is,
We do.
and it's on page 4 of the handout.
It's on the last page of the handout. So we've had several meetings with the community since our last appearance here, talking about lots of different aspects of this. The amenities package we developed over a long period of time, and there are several things that are not on here that I'll address in a moment. The first is stormwater. The existing driveway that is basically the roadway from Albemarle Street to Appleton Street is asphalt. We would like to repave that with permeable paving. All the driveways, all the new driveways for the houses will be permeable. And for those of you who are familiar, at the bottom of the hill in front of the existing mansion, there is a pond. And that pond does nothing for stormwater management. It collects a small amount of water, pumps it right out to the street when it gets to a certain level. It's basically a mosquito trap. We've been managing it as best we can, but I think the future of it is not bright. We have talked to historic preservation, because it is on the historic preservation side of the wall, about removing the pond and replacing it with a rain garden. We would dig down, use some approved soil and plantings. Our landscape architect, DCA Landscaping, Amy Mills, is involved in that project. We have left a great deal of open space in the middle of the this is 32nd Street, Albemarle Street, Appleton Street to orient you. The houses are in the front on Albemarle Street, the back on Appleton Street. There's a large area in between where we projected a heritage tree, which you can see right here, and another heritage tree which we protected, which is right here. There will be a small entrance off of 32nd Street onto the property. This will be heavily landscaped with some seating and open to anybody who might want to spend a little time there. As far as parking is concerned, all of the parking is on site. None of the garages, each house has a garage, none of which are visible from the street.
enter these two garages this way, and these two garages this way. So that each house has a garage and a parking space, and in addition, addressing concerns of some of the near neighbors about parking, especially from the apartment buildings, we have agreed that we will keep these houses out of the database of the district so that they will not be entitled to an exemption from the 2-hour parking ban. Two of the things that came from neighbors, we have agreed to work with as carefully and as closely and as hard as we can, but we can't guarantee them because they're not on our property. They will both have to be done in conjunction with DDOT. One is a much-needed crosswalk at 32nd and Albemarle Street. When people approach Albemarle Street from the park, from the trail, they are left standing on the curb almost in the street. If you come up there with a stroller or a dog, it's really quite amazing that there hasn't been an accident there. We would like to see a crosswalk there as well as a crosswalk across 32nd Street. As you know, the kids from the Montessori school line up there in the morning, and nobody pays much attention to it. So that crosswalk we will support. We will lobby the DDOT, but it is not something that we can guarantee. The other eyesore there, the main eyesore there, is the overlook into Soapstone Valley. It is bordered, fenced off by a orange and white hashed barrier. Not even a fence, it's a barrier held up by a couple of steel poles. And the planting strip between the entrance and exit to the Soapstone Trail and the driveway behind the pizza store is totally wild. It has never been maintained. If you look at it today, the grass is at least 2.5 feet tall. We would like to have our architect make a plan. We will fund it to put a proper barrier there, maintain that planting strip, maybe replace it with permeable pavers and a bench, whatever the city will allow us to do. I think as the gateway to, certainly the gateway to the southwest corner of Forest Hills, I think we deserve to have it look a lot better there. There is a significant net gain of plantings, extensive planting of trees and shrubs, as shown on the site plan. I'd be happy to go over it with anybody who would like to take a closer look at it. And probably the single biggest benefit that we've offered so far is we work very hard with the Forest Hills Alliance. When we first bought the property, the reason for buying the property was to save the mansion. It was absolutely on the chopping block. We bought it. It is now landmarked, and it's not going anywhere. It's there to stay. We think that is a great benefit to the neighborhood. It would have been a shame to lose that house. It has a plaque on the chimney. It was built in 1946, and it has a lot of history.
Thank you. So we're going to start with the question, Commissioner. Commissioner Greenberg, take the lead and go to you.
I'll cede my time to others that have discussions.
I don't have any questions on the unique public benefits. Just I think Naomi kind of outlined the schedule going forward. I'd like to hear it from you. What do you envision as the necessary community input steps before you file HUD, and how do you see this generally unfolding?
Well, our plan has been evolving for 8 or 9 months, and it has been through many, many revisions and many community meetings, and I think this is our 3rd ANC meeting. 4th ANC meeting? Thank you, Bob. Our 4th ANC meeting. We've heard from all of the neighbors within 200 feet and many, many of the neighbors, close neighbors up and down Albemarle, Appleton, 29th Street, Audubon Terrace, wherever. People have sought us out to ask about it. And we have now arrived at what we and our team, which is they're all DC people, our land use attorney, our architect, our engineer, our landscape architect. We have talked to a green consultant who we have not yet hired because we can't afford to hire him until we know that we're going to go forward with this. But he has met us on the site 4 or 5 times, made a lot of suggestions, including the rain garden in front of the mansion down here, which came from him. We have arrived at what we believe is the highest and best use for that property. There are alternatives to our plan under the PUD. We believe that this is absolutely the highest and best use. Buildings are, take their cleanest from, well, we didn't want to talk about design, so we won't.
If you would just talk a little bit more about any more steps you have with the application process and the community agenda.
We intend to file our PUD application as soon as possible. We have some more work to do in terms of the package.
And will that be the end of community input?
It will not. Okay. That process will begin a back and forth with the Office of Planning, the Office of Zoning, and the Office of Historic Preservation to tweak these plans, to take their suggestions, to have them hear our suggestions, and to work through this process to get to where we have an agreement. At that point, they will schedule a hearing as to whether or not they approve the PUD. At the ANC meeting, 2 weeks before that meeting, we will call well in advance to get on the agenda at the ANC meeting. That'll be about 2 weeks before that meeting. And at that point, we will present what is the final PUD, and there will be plenty of opportunity for input, and probably along the way.
With the community.
With the community.
I just add that, shout out to Marlene Berlin, who's done an excellent summary of this process. It's on the Forest Hills Connection site, what all the various steps are in the PUD. So I recommend that people who are interested take a look at that.
We are as versed as we can be in this process. This is a first for us, and this is a last for us.
All right. Do we have any questions from the audience? Just raise your hands right now. Just one. All right. Please come on down. Oh, you got 2? All right, 3. That's fine. So yeah, just please come on down. Use the microphone over here. State your name for minutes.
I just had a process question.
Right. Yeah.
Which is, how do we get comments into the ANC in terms of pro, con, suggested changes, or what have you? What's the process of doing that?
Let me just take that. We have an email address that goes to all of us.
Just send it to
commissioners at ANC3F. I'd also encourage you, I'm sorry, 3F.com, I'd also encourage you to talk to your own commissioner, who's been very involved with this process. I'm sure she will relay the messages both to the developers and to us that we need to get across.
At any point?
Our email's always open. So.
Yeah.
And at any point until we make a vote on a resolution, which will be 2 weeks before the hearing.
We value your input. We are listening to it. So.
And us.
Yeah. Loud, you can come on over here.
So,
Here,
thank you. I think it would be, I'm Marjorie Scher. I think it would be it would be a great advantage to everyone if PG and Bobby could do 3 things. One, have story poles on site, which are vertical poles. It would probably cost a couple of $1,000s. Vertical poles that show you the footprint of the house and also the height, so that all of us can stand over here and see, well, we're going to see the mansion from over here, but we're not going to see it from here, or whatever it is. But to give us a clearer idea of exactly what it's going to look like. Also helpful would be a materials board. It could be done as photographs, but just a better sense of the materials. The third thing is the trees, because the trees on the property are so significant and the topography is complex. If you could, based on your proposed design, just wrap a cloth or some tape, whatever is safe for the tree, orange for those trees that come down, so everybody can really see, well, those are going to come down. That would really help a great deal.
Yeah, no, readily that Bill would actually have.
We have a tree consultant, and he knows every twig on the property, and I'll take that part. We'll be happy to look into this.
Yeah, the laundry, maybe the heritage trees too.
We have one.
Yeah. Different colors.
Exactly.
Yeah. White.
Yes.
I'm Rita Arundel. I live right here, right next to the property that is being discussed. The neighborhood consistently, our position has been that we will support 2 single houses on the property where the townhouses are supposed to be located. At our meeting the other night, PG came up with Plan B, which is if this project is not approved, he would divide the property up into 3 7,500 square foot lots, wherein 3 houses could be built on them as a matter of right. We would like to see the dimensions of the lot, and we would like to really understand and know that this is in fact doable.
Yeah, that's, we've, been in touch with the Office of Zoning and Office of Planning itself. We would also like to understand, there's 2 sets of the equation there. And then there's, the zoning relief, and having an idea of exactly what that relief is coming from is something we're looking into.
Sorry.
We hear you, and we're looking to get to the bottom of that too, and fully understand it as a commission.
Can I clarify that?
Go ahead, and I'd like to ask her a question.
Sure. I'm actually just going to do one thing, because we're running over. I'm going to make a motion to extend debate for 5 minutes, and then we're going to move on from this. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? All right, it passes.
It is our duty to ourselves and our very small family organization to look at all options. From the beginning, we talked about landmarking the mansion and doing a PUD. That was how it was presented to us. That is what we have pursued. As we learn more about the PUD process and how complicated and fragile it is, we absolutely had to look into options should it fail. And we just started that process with our engineer and our land use attorney and our architect. And we think that we know what our plan B is. We don't know what it'll look like. We don't know design work, but we know footprints and massing. So that, I believe, is what Rita is referring to.
I was going to actually pose my question to Rita, but maybe I'll pose it to Commissioner Rudenberg. I think we've had a couple of emails come in suggesting that maybe the ANC have a separate meeting on this, or a community meeting, or other kind of just more straightforward PUD process and continuing neighborhood meetings with you. And so I'm not sure I'm getting a clear picture of the next steps forward. Maybe Naomi, you could address that. Are we just going to continue to have these updates at each ANC meeting? Are we expecting more informal neighborhood meetings? Is there going to be a more formal ANC type meeting on this issue? What do you see?
I'm going to let the commissioner handle that, and just want to you can talk about what you've done today, how you see this going forward, and we'll close.
So as PG has said, this has been a bit of a moving plan as more was learned about the property. You know, as originally Rock Creek Conservancy very much wanted to go in there. When they got more information about the numbers of the house and, you know, what shape the house was in, what the cost would be for them, they realized that it was not financially viable for them, so that meant that there was no longer going to be the Conservancy going in there, so that was another change. But I think, what can I say? From my understanding, PG, you should comment this too, that there's been a lot of input. You've incorporated the input, balancing it with your needs as a small family venture. It will go forward. There will continue to be the neighborhood views, writ small, writ large. The ANC will certainly give those great weight. We will give great weight. Office of Zoning, Office of Planning are going to have their view, and I think the process needs to run forward. Now, I think most of the elements have been discussed very thoroughly. If there's interest, I am happy to host. We probably had 2 or 3 community meetings about it. I honestly don't think they're beyond this sort of Albemarle corridor. I have taken the pulse elsewhere in my SMD, and people think this is an interesting project, but don't feel deeply, and I don't think really want to show up in the meeting. I've had people say that. This is nice. They have enough information. So I think the group that has been meeting is the group that holds the interest. So I will I think we all will take our cues from you about what other kinds of input you feel you still want and need to give.
Okay.
Hi, Jane Solomon. If I might make a suggestion, Naomi, as I've listened to you on process, you've talked about when the PUD is first filed, that eventually you will take a vote, but it'll be closer to the hearing time. Well, there's a different window of opportunity that comes when a PUD is filed, and the zoning, what happens is they file the PUD, the zoning commission takes a look at it, they say, okay, you're missing a few things, finish it up, and finally the zoning commission says, okay, we now have a completed application, and at that point they start sending it around to all the different agencies. That's when they send notification to the ANC, back to the Office of Planning, they send it to DDOT and so forth. So there's a window of opportunity in the case of the ANC that is 30 days prior to what's called a set-down hearing. The set-down is when they consider whether or not this thing is ready and if it should be scheduled for the full commission hearing. I would suggest that once it's filed, once it's passed any negotiation and fussing with lines, etc., once the thing is applied for and you are notified that you have that 30-day window, that to me seems like the time, if there is interest in a community meeting, a broader community meeting, that's when it should happen, because probably around the neighborhood there may be interest, but there's probably not the kind of granular interest that there is in advance of the application. But afterwards, that to me seems like the logical place.
That makes sense. That sounds good. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, PG.
Thank you very much.
And like I said, our email is open. Send us your thoughts, concerns, and all of us in the commission will print those.
As is ours.
So moving on, I'm going to let you tee it up. This is on the 5148 million
David. We have David Dale with us, who just bought the house at 5148 Linnaean Terrace. He has some plans to do some renovations in the house. Most of it is a matter of right, but there is a zoning exception that he is going to file for. And so let's hear from David, and he'll show us some drawings and some pictures, and he'll tell us exactly. And then I circulated documents to the other commissioners, and I'm gonna move that we send some documents, supporting documents, to the zoning commission. So, David,
Tell me when you want.
yeah, let Naomi know when you want to
Right, yeah,
advance
I'll
this.
talk for a little bit.
Okay, you have the microphone there? Beautiful. Okay.
Good evening. My name is David Dale, and I'm the owner of 5148 Linnaean Terrace Northwest. I'm here tonight to respectfully ask that this ANC vote unanimously to support and give its full recommendation to the Board of Zoning Adjustment my application for a special exception under Code Section 901.1, subsection 5201.3. My BZA case number is 19652. It's just barely cut off on the bottom. But the special exception that I'm seeking is solely to increase the lot occupancy limit from 30% to 37%. The reason for this increase is so that I may build an attached garage and a modest-sized deck on the rear of my house, both of which contribute to the overall lot occupancy calculation. I'm not asking for any other zoning relief at all, as my plans are otherwise entirely a matter of right in terms of setbacks, overall height, number of stories, FAR, and pervious surface area. So to look at this single aspect on which I'm seeking relief, lot occupancy. Per the DC Tax Assessor's Office, my lot is 7,502 square feet, and the existing structure occupies 1,725 square feet, or 23% of the lot currently. My proposed plan, which we'll get to in just a moment, calls for a footprint of 2,775 square feet, or 37% lot occupancy, a deviation of only 7% beyond matter of right. And I want to note here that in every other residentially zoned area of Washington, D.C., the lot occupancy limit is at least 40%, or in many cases significantly higher. Again, through this special exception, I'm asking for only 37% lot occupancy. I've shared my plans with my two immediately adjacent neighbors, Ms. Julia Marshall to the southwest at 5144 Linnaean Terrace, and Mr. J.J. Tizou to the northeast at 5152 Linnaean Terrace. Both neighbors have reviewed the plans and offered their full support of my request to increase the lot occupancy to 37%. Both wrote supporting letters, which I just picked up this afternoon, so I can give those
So
to
I
you.
have an email from JJ,
Correct.
but I don't have is the other one yet.
Right here.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
So, and just to be clear, you only have neighbors on both sides, nobody in back?
That's correct. So the house to the rear is adjacent to one of the Circle Ford Park tributaries to Rock Creek Park, with 36th Street behind it. So an additional aspect that merits mention is that, very much to my regret, a large and very old oak tree located in my backyard will be removed in the coming weeks. This is not to facilitate this construction, but rather because the tree is already well on its way to dying and presents a significantly hazardous condition. The DC arborist has inspected the tree, and the DDOT Urban Forestry Special Tree Removal Permit has already been granted, which I also have with me and share. So to be clear, I did not design this addition and then decide to remove the tree. It was the other way around. Once it was concluded that the tree had to come down for safety reasons, I designed the new rear driveway, which we'll see in a second, to take advantage of that newly available space. So the removal of this tree makes consideration of pervious surfaces all the more important. My architect and civil engineer have carefully considered the implications, including that of removing this tree I just mentioned, and recommended an aggressive plan of pervious paving surfaces that will actually result in more pervious surface once the construction is completed than currently exists, despite increasing the footprint of the home.
Yeah, I saw the tree, and there are huge bits of huge limbs already that are already falling down and already represent a hazard to anybody on the driveway or on the property.
Right. Every time it rains or there's any kind of breeze at all, there are, no exaggeration, 3 and 4 and 5 foot long chunks of 12-inch and 16-inch diameter branches just rotten, covered in lichens. Just it's dying sadly. It is a heritage tree, which at 101 inches in circumference, it's really unfortunate that it has to come down, but it's leaning badly. And as I said, the DC arborist has already looked at it, and it was not even a question. It's got to go. Okay, so moving to the slideshow, we're going to just run through the existing floor plans and elevations, and then look at proposed floor plans and elevations, the exterior elevations, and then a couple existing photographs and so forth. So that's the front view of the proposed finished house. And this is the existing structure on the lot there, obviously with a thicker black outline as the exterior. And if you look closely, you can see it says concrete patio just behind that. There's a large poured slab concrete patio that is obviously impervious. It creates actually a rainwater runoff condition, again, every time it rains, flowing back towards the service alley. That will be entirely replaced by pervious surface on the right-hand half and the garage addition that you'll see in just a second. So note also the dashed lines around the perimeter. Those are the setbacks, which will be pertinent here on the next slide. Yeah. So this is the proposed with now the thick black line representing the proposed exterior envelope of the house. And you can see the cross-shaded area coming down to the dashed line that represents the original or existing exterior of the house. So you can get an idea of the limited amount of addition. The rectangle you see on the left is going to be the garage, and for the most part, we're just moving the rear of the house back about 2.5 feet. So again, the increase in actual footprint is very little, only to 7% in excess of what would be lateral right, or a true delta of 14% from existing to proposed.
How much of that is the garage?
The garage is the majority of that, actually. And in fact, it was news to me that a deck actually counts towards lot occupancy. I had no idea. So in moving from 23% to the 37% that I'd like to build, roughly 500 square feet of that, I don't know the math, honestly, right off the top of my head, but it's probably about 50-50 of the garage addition to the deck addition. I mean, you can see they're more or less similarly sized.
The deck is on the ground?
It's elevated, actually. So the deck will certainly be a pervious surface, Trex synthetic material, recycled material, that rainwater can go through and then go through the pervious pavers system below it, which will be a screened porch. You'll see that in a second. Okay, so existing footprint of the house again, nothing really noteworthy there. And that's the existing lower floor of the house currently. You'll notice that it's a garage there on the left-hand side of the house, which frankly was just a personal preference matter. I didn't want to pull my car into the garage. I prefer to have an attached garage on the back of the house. All right, existing front elevation there at the top, that's the front door, and then the existing rear elevation. The topography of the property is such that it dramatically runs downhill from front to back, again contributing to the rainwater situation that we will actually help ameliorate to a degree by having so much pervious surface, whereas now there is very little, other than the raw grass out there. All right, left and right, current existing elevations, nothing really special there. Okay, so here we get into the proposed main floor plan. To the rear left is a dining room table that's above the garage. So this is all matter of right, as I mentioned, in terms of height. We're not maxing out the height. In fact, we're falling fairly far short of the maximum allowable height. Density, FAR, number of stories, all that, all less than or equal to matter of right. So that's the floor plan for anybody who wants to know what the house is going to look like. That's the new upper floor plan with the master bedroom, the back corner, and a balcony looking out, to the rear. Nothing especially noteworthy there either. And then the ground level with the two-car garage that represents the addition that we're discussing. You can see there in the middle at the rear is the screened-in porch with a little table that's on the deck. Okay, so this is the proposed front elevation. The idea is, and one of the reasons that I went with the architect that I did, whose name is John Lyman Jr., is that he's very well versed in mid-century modern architecture, and I certainly wanted to honor the spirit of the original architecture of the house, as well as a lot of other houses that are in effectively original condition in the neighborhood. So this is a little bit of a contemporary take on a mid-century modern style, but nonetheless still in the spirit of that architectural style. So this is the rear elevation. You can see the shadows, I guess, demonstrate how the rear comes off the house. Obviously much easier to see in the floor plan model, but there you can see how it's going to look from the rear. Again, nobody to the rear, nothing but trees back in the back. So.
Is that solar panels up on the top right?
That's actually a railing, but there will be numerous solar panels. I plan on attempting to get LEED certification in the construction of this house. We'll see how successful that is.
The railing is another deck on top.
Correct. Correct. And there you can see it from the side view. And the other side view. So the rooftop deck is limited just to the rear of the house on top of the addition. It's 15 by 15 as well. Okay, so these are existing front on the top row and rear on the bottom row. And this was an information sheet that my architect suggested putting in. It's not really legible at this distance, but it discusses some of the technical aspects of the pervious surface pavers that we plan on using. And obviously, nobody's making pervious surface pavers that don't conform to what the various requirements are for pervious surfaces, but these particular pervious pavers have a void percentage, I think is the term of art, of 9.5, which falls well below the maximum allowable, minimum, whatever the proper terminology. I'm not a civil engineer, so I can't really speak to that. Okay, so this is the chart that really puts into black and white the numbers that we're talking about here. So we've got existing, obviously, in the middle there, 7,500 square feet. As I've said, all of the setbacks, maximum height, FAR, impervious area parameters are met. The only deviation is lot occupancy. Currently 23%. Allowable matter of right is 30%, and as proposed, just 7% above at 37%.
Just want to add one point here, just to make it clear to everyone. The 30% is the maximum allowable because it's in a tree slope overlay region.
Right.
If it were not, it would be 40% allowable, and all of this would be a matter of right.
Right.
So
right.
just to make
Thank you
clear.
very much for pointing that out. I kind of get lost in the details sometimes. As I said, starting out, everywhere else in the district allows, as matter of right, at an absolute minimum, 40% lot occupancy, if not significantly more. I was looking through the zoning overlay descriptions today. Some are at 60%, some are as great as 80%. And it's my assumption that this R9 district within the overlay is at 30%, not because they don't want people building houses slightly larger, but it's so that the community has a chance to weigh in, and the ANC gets a look at it and has a vote on it for when somebody does want to come and build a reasonable size addition onto an existing structure as I'm asking for.
This all sounds great. Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, let me just start with Andrew and then go to you.
I don't have any questions at this time. Just want to let folks know that I went out to the property, walked around with David, and all of this. I would propose that we send in that Form 129.
Okay, I have some questions before we go to that. My thing is, so I realize it's a matter of right in other parts of the district. It is not a matter of right here because of the tree still overlay. And that's not just, people looking at it and things like, it's also protecting the tree canopy.
Understood.
Can we talk a little bit, so besides the one tree that's been assessed as diseased, is anything else coming down?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
In fact, I'm going to be planting a lot of trees.
Okay.
I guess I'm confused. This isn't pertinent necessarily to approve. I'm just wondering the required, existing, and proposed max height.
Right.
With the garage, and then you'll have 2 stories above that. But that's what you're proposing is 26.
Correct. The measurement as far as height goes is taken from front grade at the door, and because the topography drops off,
You're kind of not counting the garage because it drops off.
I'm not counting it. I'm not required to.
No,
I mean, I get a bonus level basically.
Right.
But that being said, I could have maxed it out and had, a full additional story so long as I stayed below the 40 feet. So,
that
from
makes,
front grade.
Right. That makes good sense. Can you describe again the closest houses behind you? How far away are they? Are they across a forest or a...
It's me.
Across Nebraska
36th
Avenue.
Street, down in the gully, and up on the other side.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking about with respect the rooftop deck as well. What's that all going to look like? But sounds kosher to me. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and just to pile on, my neighbor, my one adjacent neighbor, his house is already taller than what mine will be. And the neighbor on the other side is already further back than what I will be once this is done. So that's, I mean, they're very nice people and they say, hey, looks great, love it, no problem.
Commissioners,
Thank you.
All right, anything from the audience? All right, did you have a motion?
Yes. So, Shirley, I'm sorry, just can't get the thing on the floor. So, I'm going to move that we send Form 29 to the Board of Zoning Adjustment that basically says ANC 3F has no issues with regard to this application, and ANC 3F recommends that the exception be granted. Plans have been presented to the Commission, and it is our view that they represent reasonable deviations from the ordinances. The applicant has taken great care to ensure replacement of a hazardous tree on his property and to ensure proper water drainage. In addition, all neighbors who this could affect have given their okay. Okay, so I make a motion that we fill out this form in support of the zoning exception.
Is there a second? Commissioner Elsie, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks for a good presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
So that's his.
Marcia? So I'm going to tee this one up. This is a discussion on the downtown DC public restroom initiative. It's being pushed by coalition groups, I think, by the People for Fairness Coalition. Yes, and it's drawing attention to, and it's legislation currently for the council regarding access to public restrooms in parts of our city. And we have Marcia to talk to us more about that. Marcia, we've got 10 minutes, so if you want to, I think you said keep it to about 5 minutes for that. And then
That's the idea.
Sorry. Go from there.
Yeah, I must admit, it's a little beyond my bedtime, so I'm So, thank you very much.
Marcia.
Can you use the mic? Oh.
Yes.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's nice to be here. I'm myself a resident of Ward ANC, 3E, so it's nice to come to another ANC in my ward. So, my name is Marcy Birnbaum. I'm the mentor and advisor to the People for Fairness Coalition Downtown DC Public Restroom Initiative. One of my colleagues, George Olivat, is with me tonight. We're here primarily to gain and request support from this ANC for Bill 220223, the Downtown the Public Restroom Facilities Investment and Promotion Act, which was inspired by our initiative. We'd like to let you know a little bit. You have a handout that goes through all this. I'm not going to go through it in detail. The handout basically goes over who benefits from having clean, safe public restrooms, why they're needed, and some models. We currently have support from 4 of the key 5 Ward 2 ANCs. We're expecting the 5th. You are our second Ward 3 ANC. We are on the agendas for 3 others and waiting to hear from the 5th. Support from Ward 3 is particularly important because this bill has been referred to the Committee on Transportation and Environment, chaired by Mary Kay. So the bill itself directs assuming it's approved, a working group headed by the Department of Public Works to do 2 things: to examine throughout Washington, D.C. areas of D.C. where it makes sense due to pedestrian traffic, needs, availability of water and sewerage, standalone public restrooms available 24/7. I'm not sure if any of you have traveled in Europe, but if you have, in many, many cities in Europe, Singapore, Beijing, Tokyo, you'll find it's just a matter of course because people realize that people need restrooms. For some reason, our city hasn't caught on to that yet. So that's one piece. The other piece, building on a series of successful experiences starting in England and spreading into Germany and elsewhere, is providing incentives to private facilities, primarily restaurants, to open their restrooms to the public. So those are the 2 key elements of the bill. And as I said, it's based the bill was crafted based on lessons learned and best practices from other cities in the United States and elsewhere, based on the research that we have done. So our initiative is nothing more than reflecting lessons learned and best practices from other places, specifically 20 cities in this country that are now installing very successfully clean, safe public restrooms available 24/7. There used to be those types of restrooms in Washington. They were closed down in the 50s because they were seen as being dens of iniquity, and there are some reasons for that that are being compensated by this. So why are they needed? First of all, it's a human right. Everybody has a right to sanitation. UN has declared it a human right, critical for personal and public health. I might add, you may or may not be aware that what makes it particularly critical right now is San Diego has a major proliferation of hepatitis A, an epidemic. Many people have died. One of the ways of transmitting it is through feces, ingestion of just the tiniest amounts. San Diego, which already has a couple public restrooms, is scrambling to get more. That's one of many, many reasons. The other reason is that we've done some inventories, and downtown DC has a total of 5 public restrooms open during the day for limited hours. 3 in all of DC open 24/7. And 1 at Union Station and 2 in Lincoln and Jefferson Memorials, which are 2 rather inconvenient places if you're downtown or any place in the middle might have to get there. We have found through an inventory that we did, we went to 5 areas of Washington, D.C. with a lot of pedestrian traffic and a lot of homeless. We are a group of homeless and formerly homeless. I am not. But we believe everybody deserves public restrooms. When we went in 2015, half of them were open to the public. We went back in 2016. We went back a few months before, and 11 of the 85, or 13%, are now open to the public. So the trend, as you probably know, is closing public restrooms, not closing their restrooms. So many people benefit from public restrooms. I had never thought about this until I got into it. People who are restroom challenged, there might be some in this room. I'm certainly one of them by age. When you gotta go, you gotta go, and you gotta go urgently. There are many other types of people who are restroom challenged. You can see on our website, it's an amazing group of people. Businesses benefit in many ways by having public restrooms around. Tourism. A tour guide recently told us that off the mall, he's very hesitant to take tourists out to many areas because he's not sure he can find public restrooms for them, which then inhibits their opportunity to shop and spend money in our country, in our city. For those of you who are bikers, runners, and joggers, you might know what it's like when you're running and you can't find a restroom and you don't feel like you want to relieve yourself in public. We've been told by taxi and Uber drivers that in the middle of the night they often have to get out and pee or poop in an alley because there's no place to go. And then people who are housing unstable. So there are three options that we have presented that are being considered by the DC City Council. The first on here is the blended community toilet scheme, which I already told you about. And what happens there is that they receive an incentive, and then they put a decal on their doors. You're walking around and you can see them. And many cities throughout Europe actually have apps, so if you're walking down the street, you can find out where you can find them. These two are two options for standalone public restrooms. The one at the bottom, for those of you who've either been to San Francisco or New York or in Europe, is very frequently found. It's the automated self-cleaning toilet. It's clean, it's attractive, it's open 24/7, but because it's totally closed and it can remain closed for 20 minutes, it has been in some cases used for illicit purposes. The Portland Loo, which is the one that's gaining a lot of traction in the United States, which is the one above, was designed by the mayor, the city commissioner of Portland, with others, looking at lessons learned and best practices. As you will see, it's got louvers at the bottom, so you can see who's in there. It's got a variety of safety features, light at night. It's got, you don't want to stay in there very long because it's not very comfortable. You go outside to wash your hands. And so this is the one that we personally have found to be most successful. However, that's not our choice. The DC government looks at the appropriate choices. I might add, and this is one of the reasons I'm here tonight, is that one of the two key lessons learned have been found for standalone public restrooms. One, they must be in areas where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, commercial areas, and where they're very visible and where there's water and sewer. And the second, which leads me here tonight, is you don't do these without buy-in from ANCs, from bids, from community organizations, otherwise they'll be rejected. So I just close with a few resources here. We have a website which has a lot of documents. It has our PowerPoint presentations, our studies. How you can support us is, yes, we do hope that you come up with a resolution supporting it. Please email Council Member Che. We thought up until today that there wasn't going to be a hearing. It looks like there will be one. But when the hearing time comes, we will be looking forward to people coming out and supporting it. We have lined up people. We would love to have Representative ANC 3E testify at the hearing. And I put out a biweekly update that goes to a variety of people. And if any of you are interested, sign up. And if any of you want to join us, we'd love to have you. That's it.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any questions?
Do we have a resolution?
We do, but I have a points of clarification.
Yeah, well, I guess my only question is, and I guess it goes to the resolution. I mean, we don't have bill language in front of us. Is it just for them?
The bill language is available on the website. If you go into the website, you'll see the bill language.
When's the hearing?
Huh?
The hearing date?
There is not a hearing date set. It's going to be in the end of November, early December. The reason we wanted to do this before the hearing was before going into the hearing, we want to show that we have full support of all the ANCs in Ward 3 and most in Ward 2.
Are there any council members back in this hearing?
Yes, well, it was introduced by Councilmember Brown Nadeau. Yes, we have support from the office, from David Grosso himself, from Silverman's office, Alvin's office, Todd, a few others.
Okay.
But yes, there is support, and when the bill comes close, we will be getting the support of the two people on Committee on Transportation Environment we haven't gotten through to. But yes, absolutely, great support.
Is there a financial note attached to this?
Yes, well, if you look at it, you'll see the price tag. And so, in the case of the community toilet scheme, there's 600, but actually the Georgetown bid has gotten very excited about that option. They don't believe they can have a standalone. So they've actually on their own gone out to...
I'm sorry, not to purchase an individual one, or for the program to be implemented throughout the city. Is there a specific amount of money that this bill asks?
No, the bill will come up with it. Basically, it's up to the DC City Council, or, I'm sorry, once a decision is made as to how many restrooms to install and what that would cost. And as I said, Georgetown is prepared, the ANC is prepared to come up with estimates based on they've gone out to businesses in their 25 blocks to see what they would want if they got it in these.
Is there any alternative to purchasing these things outright by the district? Are there companies that will, I don't know, install them, rent them, charge them?
Yeah, the automated self-cleaning toilet is rented, but as you can see, the maintenance cost is very, very high. We're talking about $100,000 to $150,000 a year. The other's a lot cheaper. I've certainly looked at putting in porta potties, and in addition to the smell and everything else, it ends up being much cheaper to install a Portland loo.
One of the things also in traveling to illness, in addition to restrooms are pay restrooms.
Well, in Europe, many of them are paid restrooms. The idea here is that they would be open to the public and they would not be charged.
You mentioned that these models are based on best practices from studies of other cities. You've also suggested that the program is associated with a wide range of outcomes, from increased tourism to economic development.
These are benefits,
public health.
yeah.
Have any of them actually been evaluated? Is there an evidence-based?
Well, in terms of businesses, yes. In the case of Portland, where they actually ended up putting in eight Portland loos within a short period, they found that businesses really, really appreciated it because fewer people use their restrooms, and more people who are restroom challenged would come down to their areas. And interestingly enough, over the period of the year, a savings of $10,000 in less poop to scoop. So there is evidence. The other is kind of obvious. It's kind of obvious that people who are restroom, I mean, I can tell you my story. I'm 68 years old, half of my bladder's reduced. I'm beginning to find myself, much to my dismay, reticent to go out on the walk until I know there's a restroom available. The others, at the hearing, we will have people all testifying to the advantages. Public health, there are many advantages that are documented. I can certainly share that with you. It's on the website.
Thank you. It's a very, very interesting social justice issue. Really appreciate you bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Before we turn it over to the audience real quick, Phil or Ian, I was wondering, has the mayor come out in support or said anything?
She doesn't.
The mayor is not aware of it, but we do have support from the deputy mayor's office for health and human development.
Services.
Human services, I'm sorry. The deputy mayor is familiar with it, and her chief of staff is very supportive. We would love to be able to see the mayor. We asked to, but she's very busy. But yes.
Mayor.dc.gov.
Huh?
said Mayor.
We've already presented the proposal, but yes, it's very important to have that support. We've asked to get on the agenda the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. I don't know where you're from, but if you can help us get
I'm
on.
from where you live.
Huh?
I live down the street from you.
Oh, okay, but I'm saying, if you have a role with the DC government and can help us get an appointment with the mayor.
We can talk after the meeting.
Huh?
We can talk after the meeting. I
Great.
don't want to take the
All right.
commissioner's time.
The councilwoman done anything with it, or she's still examining?
So I'm actually handling this bill for our office. As you said, I actually spoke with a member from staff from Councilman Ringo's office. They will be having a hearing, I don't know, end of November, December. It's not set yet, so if it is later than due to scheduling reasons, it might be.
I'm sorry, your name is?
My name is Michael Corsello. I'm from Councilmember Chase's office.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. We heard today that you were planning to do that. We really appreciate it.
And I want to say that, importantly for this bill, talking about the options, it is a working group. So endorsing this bill is actually just endorsing the question of what to do and having the government look into it rather than taking an option. And if an option is selected, an agency could do it, or there could be future legislation, which ANC, I hope, would weigh in on again. But so when you're thinking about the resolution, that is a different question rather than saying we're going to do it.
Absolutely. It's forming a working group that will go out. We might prefer one option over another, but that's beside the point. The working group makes that determination based on information. We'll be happy to work with them.
If I recall, it has a fair amount of language about consultation with ANC all through the bill.
I'm sorry?
If I recall, the bill language is a fair amount in there about consultation with the
Absolutely. It has built-in consultation, you've done your homework, with ANCs and bids and community organizations, because basically the bill was developed in close collaboration with us based on best practices. Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions from the audience? Okay.
Thank you for having us here. I hope I sounded slightly intelligible tonight.
Okay. So we're going to make you come back next week. No, I'm joking. I think Commissioner Rubrick has a resolution. I think you do. Yeah. So let me just pull it up. She'll read the operative clauses, and we'll go from there. Sorry.
I don't have the bad issue.
I might add, we have three of the major bids are supporting public restrooms, which are very important.
And that's Main Street?
Main streets cannot do that, apparently.
I just wondered if you'd spoken with Teresa
I
Cameron.
have spoken to Historic DuPont Circle and the two in Capitol Hill, but they are not in a position to endorse.
Okay, so we have a bill that, basically says this bill is, we have a resolution that says this bill is out there, it's going to be considered, and then the operative clause is that therefore be it resolved that ANC 3F lends and supports the Public Restroom Facilities Installation and Promotion Act of 2017 that has been referred to the Committee on Transportation and Environment and the Committee on Health. And then be it further resolved that Commissioners Pat Kopchak and myself are authorized to speak on behalf of ANC 3F regarding this matter.
I'm going to make a motion to approve this resolution. Second by Commissioner Dickinson. All in favor?
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. Thank you for coming.
Greatly
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your work on this. We appreciate
Well, we're passionate about it.
it.
Didn't know anything about it.
You
at the
got me on
beginning,
the
but
human
I'm
rights and
passionate.
public health.
Okay, so our next issue is the 2900 Upton Street Top Traffic Calming Resolution. This was originally on our consent agenda, but distributing it to the neighborhood on proper notice. So we're going to discuss it now. We had a presentation at our last month's meeting regarding traffic along 2900 block of Upton. This has got to study the effective and appropriate traffic calming measures in the neighborhood. Does not specify what they are. SDOT to report those findings to the neighborhood once they're available, and then to implement them afterwards. Are there any questions or comments about this from commissioners, from the audience? All right, then I'm going to make a motion to pass this resolution. Second from Commissioner Ahmad. All in favor? All opposed? Passes unanimously. Other business.
2018. We've received our full allotment from the city, which is an achievement, I can assure you. Since our last meeting, much of our receipts have been due to that for a total of $3,978.26. Our expenditures have included staff wages, our grant to Northwest Neighbors Village approved tonight, and our internet costs for a total of $1,551.38. Our current bank balance is $90,130, and we're now operating under the budget that we approved recently. So that's it. Any questions about the treasurer's report? Okay. And the last item is, unless anyone has anything else, it's just that we would like to take a moment to recognize a special event that has happened to some member of our ANC family, and that is our employee, Rachel. We wanted to take a moment to congratulate you. Rachel got married.
Come on down.
So we just wanted to recognize that really special event in your life and tell you that we appreciate you. We just have a small gift to say thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. And that's it.
Do you have a motion to adjourn?
Move that we adjourn.
So moved by Commissioner Rupert. Does she have a second?
Thank you.
Commissioner Milano, the second. All in favor? Meeting adjourned. 10:16.
Thank you.
Well, let's say 2019.